The approach to Distillery scene I'm just about to share with you, for a lot of you will be very iconic. It's the end of a pilgrimage from all over the world to a place that makes whisky like nowhere else really. The problem is, it's a whisky that's so successful, that's so loved, that none of us can buy it. Certainly not easily. So I'm here to find out what that's all about. And is there anything that can be done about it? Welcome to Springbank. I'll see you in a second. Hello whisky folk, hello everybody, welcome to the vPub, welcome to another Thursday night. Of course it's a different Thursday night from usual. Everybody knew I was down here participating in the Springbank Whisky School this week. So if I'd tried to skive off and take a bit of a holiday this week, I'm sure you'd have been up in arms. I have to take the opportunity to get together with the team down at Springbank and talk about all things Springbank. Ask your questions, ask the questions that I've got about it, and just kind of get under the skin a wee bit of the distillery down here. A distillery that's so close to so many hearts. Throughout tonight, I'm going to be joined by some of the team here, and we're going to ask them some questions about the things that we're thinking about when it comes to Springbank. How easy is it going to be to get in the future? What's happened with Springbank availability and releases over the last few years? What's happening with the Whisky School? What's happening with all the changes that seem to be going on here? Throughout tonight, yes, please chime in with your questions. I'll do my very, very best to reach out to you as I speak to the people that are going to join me tonight. But throughout tonight, we'll have David Allen joining us. We'll have Finlay Ross, and we'll also have Ranald Watson. And of course, we'll finish out tonight with a Springbank themed quiz. Now this quiz was one that I really had struggled to put together because it was one that I wanted you guys to participate in as you tuned in live. I wanted to challenge the team here that are going to participate along with us, and I wanted to challenge the people that I've been here with all week on the Whisky School. So I hope you'll stay for that at the end. In the meantime, I'm going to do what I always do and jump into the lounge and welcome some of you beautiful whisky folk and dedicated bar flies knocking on for 350 of you here already. I love the support. Thank you all so very, very much and welcome. I hope you're all doing great. Let's jump in. Mark Goins is here. Good to see you, Mark. I hope you're keeping well. Listen, everybody let me know how the audio is. I've got a backup mic as well, but we're trying these in order to kind of keep the echoes down a wee bit. Let me know if I'm coming in loud and clear. While lots of orange, if you're trying to get my attention, of course, just type aquavite. That's what I'll be looking for, and I'll try and keep in touch with you as much as I can. Good to see you, Leanne. Scotch in the Bay is here. So good to see you, Leanne. Hope you're doing well. Planning another trip over here again, aren't you? Pedro Menezes is here from Brazil. Pedro, good to see you. Karsten, he's saying, good evening, Roy. Much excited for this one. I imagine quite a few people are. Everwind is here. Good to see you, Chris. I hope you're keeping well, buddy. Bruno Martins is here too from Lisbon. And Mark Goins, fantastic. Greg's Whisky Guide, I hope you're keeping well, buddy. How's things over in Paris? It's been a wee while since I've saw you in. I hope you're keeping well. Rick Johnson saying, good afternoon. From San Francisco, Roy, and fellow barflies. Love the Springbank lighting. Well, we're having a wee bit of trouble with it. The camera seems to be floating about a wee bit. I've currently got a bit of a pink tan, but that's fine. As long as you can see me and as long as you can hear me, we'll be fine. Whisky 101, Nick is saying, even Roy, I bet this is the first time in your life that you're happy to be in a school detention. It's kind of funny because my fellow pupils are all exhausted. I'm a wee bit tired too. It's been a very, very busy week. There's a lot of hard graft in this whisky school, but there's also a lot of whisky too. And obviously everybody that comes to this thing, they're whisky fans, they bring whisky, we're sharing whisky. And we tend to be a wee bit light on sleep by the time we get to the end of the week. So they're home, perhaps tuning in remotely and catching up on some sleep, because tomorrow, on Friday for the whisky school, we set an exam. So I imagine that they're all doing a wee bit of swatting as well. But yes, it doesn't feel like detention, but I know what you mean, buddy. Good to see you, Rick. Sorry, Nick. Hill's good to see you. Good to see you, Roy. How's the wee tune treating you? It's been fantastic. It's been much better than anybody could have. I mean, it's not just the fact. It's not just the wee tune. It's not just the fact I'm coming to see a place that I love and all of that kind of thing. There was an idea that I was going to be a bother, that, you know, accommodating people that come and do the whisky school is going to be troublesome for Springbank and the team here to accommodate. But that's not what happened. Everybody's been super, super welcoming. It's been incredible to witness. It's just great to get to know the team so much better and to see behind the curtain a wee bit. And we'll try and share as much of that with you as I can. The thing is that if you come to Scotland on a wee pilgrimage, if you travel here, you're already taken quite a journey for the most part. And then to travel down the peninsula to Campbelltown is a further pilgrimage again. But hopefully tonight you'll get a sense that it's worth that journey. C.A. Scotty has joined the Barflies. Thank you, buddy. Thank you very much for your support. Everybody that supports by joining the Barflies is, of course, keeping all the vPubs and the content on the channel ad-free. Thank you all so much. Whisky Central, Shayla is celebrating being a member for 31 months. Shayla, so good to see you. Thanks for bringing us along for the ride. You're very welcome. I hope you're well. Jimmy Legg is saying, thank you so much for this. It's a beautiful thing. Can't wait to see what happens. Jimmy Legg is Springbank fan numero uno, isn't he? He's had that as his logo from the very beginning. Jimmy, it's wonderful to have you, and it's not a legitimate vPub without Jimmy Legg. Fantastic. Okay, so yes, that's exactly what I've been talking about. We're here at a distillery that makes arguably some of the most loved Scotch whisky on the planet. And certainly that's become, if anybody's tuned into the Oswas before, and it's not just the fact that they've been successful in the Oswas with nominations, with wins, but it's also, you have to look at just how much of a vote percentage, the ratio is huge. We're not just talking about a distillery that is doing quite well. We're speaking about a distillery that is genuinely loved, so much to the point that it's really, really difficult to get a hold of their whiskey. And I'm not speaking about, you know, global supplies. I'm speaking about even here locally in Scotland, it can be tricky. So obviously the distilleries had to plan, it's had to try and accommodate that. But they're also very, very careful that they don't want to change the whiskey. They don't want to change the character, of course, but they don't want to change the philosophy. They don't want to change the ethos or the culture of what they've been bringing, uniquely been bringing to Scotch whisky over the last few years. In order to tackle some of those things, in order to tackle some of those challenges and dynamics, I'll bring in the team one at a time. I'm going to ask David Allen to step up first, and I'll see you in a wee second. Hopefully we can hear, hopefully everybody can see and hear David. Fantastic. Welcome at the vPub. How are you?
Welcome to our pub, Rob.
Yes, I know.
Washback Bar.
I couldn't have myself here for a week, especially if I'm going to be here on a Thursday night and take another week off. We had to take the opportunity. I reached out to you and said, hey, I'm coming to the whisky school. What do you think about doing a vPub? And you responded immediately. What did you say? Should be fine.
It should be
fine.
You know,
just that typical tone, that typical kind of Springbank attitude. Absolutely fine.
Say yes, and then we'll kind of make it work later on and get the logistics sorted out. But
absolutely,
so far, so
absolutely.
Good.
It has been. And the only thing that's kind of preventing things happening particularly well tonight is my exhaustion. This Springbank Whisky School is not for the faint-hearted. it's not an academic course that we're going through here. This is a very, very hands-on thing. School is, I can understand we are being schooled. There is an education element. Every single module, the work and effort that you put into it, the thought, the scheduling, the planning is something to really celebrate. It's incredible. It is right to call it a school, but it's hands-on. It's really hands-on.
It's an experience as much as it's a school.
Aye.
And it's you're doing everything. I don't think many people imagine when they start the school on Monday morning, you're going to be shoveling something like 13 tons of malt in your first kind of hour or two.
Well, what's amazing is that I'm exhausted. I'm really I'm feeling it. Every joint I'm feeling it. And then I look at these guys that have got, that's their entire shift is doing that thing. And I've only been doing it for an hour or two. You know, so to complain, to whinge about it seems really inappropriate. It just gives you such an appreciation for the graft that goes into it. I think we're going to cover, and you and I can talk a wee bit about the Whisky School. I think we just want to celebrate it, but obviously talk about it in the context of that currently the waiting list is closed for this Whisky School. And it's kind of suffering from a lot of the dynamics. It's easy to say you're suffering from, you know, the challenges of your own success. You know, your whiskey is really difficult for people to get a hold of. And one of the most common questions I get in my community is, Roy, why are you still talking about Springbank? We can't get Springbank. It's frustrating. And even the people that can, depending on where they are in the world, are paying inflated prices. That kind of reflects on the distillery here, and that's got to be frustrating. I think the place to start off, David, if you don't mind, give us a wee synopsis of, because in your tenure at Springbank, you remember when only those that knew about Springbank were interested, and now how that's changed. What would you say, a 5-year period, 10-year period, longer?
I mean, I've been here 10 years almost to the week, and you're right, it's changed pretty significantly since then. When I started, you know, Springbank was the whiskey drinkers' whiskey, not known by many outside of your hardcore whiskey drinkers, and in a lot of cases it was known as sort of dust collectors. You'd find it in the bottom shelf or the top shelf with a bit of dust on it in some, you know, random European shop. And, you know, we had to go out there and do tastings with whiskey clubs, with retailers all over Sweden, Belgium, Germany, and kind of just tell people the story. It was good whiskey. We just had to get people to try it. And it's a good, honest, genuine story. It's not a marketing story. When I started, I kind of half expected Ranald.
When did you start?
So 10 years ago, so 2013, August 2013. Yep. I kind of thought there'd be some sort of formal sort of training, some marketing training to this, but it was more or less jump in, do the Whisky School or do a bit of time production, speak to the guys, take that experience on the road. And that's very much how we do things. And it seems to have worked. You know, it's almost like a ripple effect where, you know, we've got a genuine story, we've got sort of good provenance, and that sort of certainly resonates with people. Yep. Now more than ever.
Yep.
And it just, you know, this sort of ripple effect is, I guess, gradually turned into a bit of a tsunami, and we are where we are now.
So you're measuring that in the last decade. That's from the start of your tenure here. Mm-hmm. So you must have gone through a few years of, you know, kind of, I don't know, toiling through whiskey clubs, over the tabletops. The amount of times I've seen you at a festival over a white table cover, you know, pouring whatever drams and things, whatever releases it may be, and continually speaking to people to explain to them what Springbank is. Has that changed? Do you still have to explain what Hazelburn is? Or?
Funnily, you know, you mentioned it, 'cause we don't do too many whiskey shows now.
No, you don't. That's right.
We don't want to add sort of fuel to the fire, I guess. But we did the Whisky Fringe in Edinburgh a couple of weeks ago, and I was saying to the guys that previously, when you do the Whisky Fringe, when I started, it seemed like you were telling every second person about Springbank, what we are, what we do, the whiskies, introducing the range. They might have heard about Springbank, but certainly not Long Row at Hazelburn.
Sure.
This Whisky Fringe, everybody knew all about Hazelburn, Long Row, Springbank. So, you know, it's pretty incredible.
Is that down to what? Is that down to
people like yourself, Roy?
So what you're talking about then is word of mouth. What you're
Very
talking
much
about
so.
is the ripple effect. What you're talking about.
We don't advertise in any particular way. We think the best form of advertising is a personal recommendation.
Through the liquid.
Exactly. You know, if we can introduce that to you, you go, that's pretty good. And then we tell you about the story, the Springbank story. You know, hopefully that'll sort of stick with you. You'll tell someone else, if you have your whiskey club, they'll enjoy it, they like it, and word spreads like that. And that's how we've kind of grown in a very kind of organic way over the last 10 years. We've never had sort of marketing budgets. We don't have samples to give retailers. We don't even, get lots of requests from bloggers and people like that for samples. And we don't enter competitions normally. We kind of keep under the radar, and it seems to have worked.
It's interesting because we talk that a modern model should be something that you can just put effort into the product and rely less on. And I think we need to make a distinction between hype and consensus probably at the start, because hype is a word that's used around Springbank. It grates with me a little bit, because hype is something that is artificially elevated. So hype is something that requires something extra outside of the thing in order to. That's not what's happening at Springbank. It's consensus. We're not sharing Springbank with people and they're saying, "Oh, what's the big deal?" That's not happening. People understand it. People get it from the density, the variety, the quality, the enjoyment that comes purely from the liquid. So if you have a budget, the budget's going into that. And I've been shocked to see where the money goes. The money doesn't seem to be going on automation and technology and efficiency, but the money goes to making that product as true to what it has been for the last few decades as possible. I cannot believe the amount of people that are on site here. It's like orange bees just buzzing about everywhere, happy, hardworking. That's where the money's going.
You're exactly right. We always like to invest back into ourselves, so in our staff, buildings. You'll speak to Finlay about maintenance and preventative maintenance and things he's got planned. Invest in buildings, the infrastructure we have, but especially the people. And at last count, including seasonal staff, well over 100 in Campbelltown itself, and probably still, even with seasonal staff now departing, going back to uni, probably still just over 100.
That's incredible. I mean, does that make you one of the biggest or the biggest employer in Campbelltown now? Because it's not a big town.
If possibly the biggest private employer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, quite proud of that. We are a rural community. There's not many employment opportunities outside of your sort of traditional sort of industries here. So by us making the whiskey in the manner that we do, pretty hands-on, labour intensive, it means we can employ lots of people to do it. If we're expanding production, it's because we've employed more people to make more whiskey rather than automating anything.
Yep.
A big part of our sort of plans over the last few years have been bringing tourists here. So things like the Washback Bar we're in right now. Canheads have a great tasting room and a blending lab there, and that means we're employing hospitality staff, more retail staff, tour guides, the full works. Yep. So it's not just production or sales. It's the full.
It's everywhere. It's the bottling hall. It's in the malt floors. I mean, every day you're meeting new people. There's new handshakes. There's new, "Oh, how you doing?" And
the guest house you're staying in right now, or guest house. The staff we have in there.
Yeah,
they're really supported by people coming to the whiskey school.
Yeah,
and these sort of tour packages we do, where you can come and sort of spend 3 nights with us and sort of do everything condensed into 3 days.
I think we're going to have a takeaway here in a sense that as I was going through kind of having the bullet points of what I was going to talk about tonight, there's going to be a lot of questions potentially that comes in from the community either tonight, or I can relay questions that I've had in the past to you. But what we're going to see is that there's like, okay, we don't have that for these reasons, but we have this. I think there will be a takeaway. I'm not suggesting that there's suddenly going to be a solution to some of the difficulties that Springbank are seeing. I mean, you are a kind of victim of your own success. It's just the way that it is. It's difficult for you. It's difficult for you to keep up with demand. It's difficult for you to continually answer these questions that you're inevitably going to get tonight. But surely it's better than the alternative. When you started in 2013, 10 years ago, you must have seen a completely different work ethic, a completely different dynamic. So instead of, you talked about dusty things in bottles and getting the word out there, now the problem is that your product doesn't even hit the shelf. Is that difficult? I mean, is that like, okay, it's difficult, but we'd rather have it that way? How does it affect your daily?
It certainly is a challenge. You could say, surely, Dave, your job's the easiest job in the world. You could just open the doors, sell it all, job done. But, it's a pretty short-term approach for what we're doing. We want our whiskey to be drunk by people who are genuinely interested in Springbank and not just trying to flip it in the secondary market.
Yep.
We want to be visible in shops and bars, not just, stored away in somebody's sort of closet, not to see the light of day because they think it's an investment.
Yep.
And, we don't want people within our own supply chain exploiting or profiteering from the demand. I think we price our whiskies fairly reasonably for what they are. Springbank 10 at £50, £52 now in the UK, which for what it is in the age statement, I think
that's what I've got in the glass right now. It's fantastic.
It's pretty good.
There's no doubt. I think everybody knows that, and everybody appreciates that. You're probably one of the most inefficient producers of whiskey in Scotland.
Yeah. When you break down how many people we employ, I suppose, versus what our output is, Finlay will maybe pull me up, and it's something like 260,000 litres. That's a lot of people for quite a small outturn. So in many ways, we are really inefficient. We employ far too many people to make and sell such a small amount of whiskey.
And I don't know how to contextualize that. I don't know how to. I mean, that's still a tiny volume. Is that Springbank?
Yeah.
Longrow, Hazelburn.
Yeah, the three of those are up.
And Kilkerran, or is
Kilkerran, you're looking at just shy of 100,000 litres. So we produce Springbank at Springbank Distillery for 9 months of the year, then move over to Glengyle for 3 months of the year.
Yeah. And we can talk a wee bit about that as well, and plans for the future. I know that we're going to get production folk involved. We're going to get Finlay involved and things like that to talk about things that I really find quite interesting that I only discovered when I come here this week. But we are talking about a tiny distillery. It's big in terms of workforce. It's big in terms of the space, the footprint it has here in the town. But your output remains, stubbornly tiny. But this that makes this liquid, surely.
Yeah. There's certainly, we could, if we were that type of company, increase production by expanding more stills and things like that, but that would completely turn the character of what we've built up over the best part of 200 years on its head, and we wouldn't have the same fans, the same plaudits as we have now. So there's no intention to change anything in our production. I mean, we do all our own malting on site. That's really a maximum of sort of 23 tonnes a week, which just kind of restricts us ultimately.
Yep.
In the future, it'd be great if we could do 12 months a year production at Springbank and 12 months at Glengyle and have a full-time workforce up there and a chance to employ more people from the community. And I'm sure we'll get there at some stage. But short of, just saying, right, we're just going to disband the 10, 12, 15-year-old and throw it into a non-age statement whiskey just to get our whiskey out there. There's not really too much we can do just by the nature of whiskey.
Be a good short-term solution, but that's never been what you're about.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And because we have this, I guess, luxury of being kind of independently owned, we don't have the pressures of external shareholders saying, right, come on, what are we doing to increase profit this year, this, that. You can be much more efficient here. You should be aiming for this sort of sales target every year. Our philosophy is very much make enough whiskey to sell, to cover our costs and employ people in the community. And, as long as we keep doing that, Springbank is always going to be the Springbank that we know.
And when you talk about the malting, I'm going to jump in here. There's lots of questions coming in, but when you talk about that malting thing, listen, I can testify to that. It feels like half of the week so far has been to do with barley, literally holding barley, shoveling barley, touching barley at every step of the way, and then you realise there are very few distilleries anywhere, but certainly the very few distilleries in Scotland where you could have that experience. And when you realise how much of it is based on that, it's backbreaking. It's very, very difficult. It's time consuming, but clearly, in fact, it's unique for Springbank because it's 100% of your Springbank long roll Hazelburn production, and currently 100% of Kilkerran too, which is it's until you see it, until you feel, until you know what it's like to move, you know. And I know it's 23 tons over the course of a week. I've not moved anything close to that, but I have worked like I haven't worked since I was a young man this week. And you get to understand the crucial role that barley has. I'm going to jump into the chat here and pick up some of these comments of people have been patiently waiting here. Dan Dawkins is saying, I normally catch the live, but jumped in for the first few minutes of a momentous occasion. I'll catch the rest on replay Slantia. Thank you, Dan. Thank you for the drama, my friend. Thank you so much. And Jochen is saying, thank you, Roy and Bill and Carl, for so openly accepting two German strangers in your midst last Saturday. For one of the great time, I very much hope our paths will cross again. Jochen, it was fantastic to hang out with you. Cheers to you and Thomas, and I hope we bump into each other again, my friend. Thank you for the generous pour. We've got Keith Durkin, who's celebrating being a barfly. No comment or anything there, Keith, but thank you very much for your support, my friend. Eric Cunliffe in Canada saying, hope you're having a blast back at school, Roy. Looking forward to buying you a dram in person in a month's time, buddy. Yes, everybody keep the date for your diaries, the 30th of September. I'm already starting to collect some bottles. More on that to follow for me to share with you all when we get together at the Bon Accord on Saturday the 30th. Can't wait. James DeJulio has bought us a wee dram as well. James, thank you for your support. No comment, buddy, but it's brilliant to have you in. And Jimmy Legg has bought us another one to say, Aquavita, can you tell David that not everyone is complaining about how hard it is to buy Springbank? Many of us understand why and are happy to put in the extra effort to get the whiskey we love.
It's appreciated, Jimmy.
Yes, indeed it is. So we're you know, there's, I don't know, I should maybe jump in and try and find some questions. And when I'm doing this, I'm fully listening to you, but obviously this is going by so fast. It would just be nice. If you're trying to get my attention, I appreciate you've probably been doing that, but just type Aquavita, it comes up in orange and I should see it. Reb Mordecai, Reb, good to see you, buddy, saying if they refuse to expand Springbank, then the only option is to open another distillery in Campbelltown. Well, there has been an announcement or so over the years. It'd be interesting. That's not even on the topic list tonight.
No.
Can we ask about that? There was an announcement that went out there.
Yeah, there are certainly plans from ourselves to have a third distillery in the portfolio, really kind of starting with a foundation stone being laid in 2020, our 200-year anniversary. So I guess medium-term plans, and I guess what capacity that distillery has is still up for discussion with Finlay and Ranald and Neil Clapperton, the managing director. But thoughts are maybe make it a whiskey school add-on or a whiskey school university.
Wow.
So kind of maybe almost like a micro distillery, I guess, sort of sitting somewhere between Springbank and Glengyle on our own sort of footprint.
And that's with a view to encouraging people into the distilling business, perhaps a different way to look at distilling, a different product, and how maybe the Springbank way can affect things. Would that be relying on maltings that's already here, or would you be looking to put in? Because that's the bottleneck right now, as I understand it is.
Yeah. Maybe it's one for Finlay, what we do for maltings, but whether that would have its own malting facility, I wouldn't think so, given the size of it. We're talking about a new malting facility at Glengyle, a drum malting there, something sort of more modern and efficient. So whether that can do it, or if it's a whiskey school, maybe people want to do the hard manual labour you've done yourself at the Springbank malt floors as well.
I'll encourage them to try it at least.
Try and get the photos for Instagram.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. I mean, okay, so that's fantastic news as well. And what we're seeing here is then, because we're hearing that there's distilleries popping up in Campbelltown all over the place. If things go ahead, you could have potentially 7 or 8 distilleries within the next decade appearing here.
Yeah, I think anything that helps us, enhance that Campbelltown footprint is no bad thing at all.
Well, this is interesting, and I think it's something worth talking about, is that you would think that there was going to be a kind of, well, no, we were here first, and that kind of stuff. And it's you're embracing the fact that there's more distilling coming to Campbelltown. You seem to be genuine. When any discussion I've had, people are genuinely excited about it. Are you not worried about staff? Are you worried about competing for staff? Are you worried about competing for that kind of... Because there were times in the past that you guys were the only distillery operating here, and Campbelltown has suddenly built up this fervour on the back of the brands that you have, your neighbours up the hill there at Glen Scotia. Are you concerned about that, or is there...
Not really. We've always been the flag bearer for Campbelltown, and quite proudly so, and been quite, we've helped Glen Scotia in the years. We set up, Glen Gyle.
It's worth saying that Glen Scotia was kept running from the team at Springbank back in the day. Would that be right?
Yeah, there's some involvement at some point from us, and so we very much have that local relationship still today. So other distilleries to help enhance Campbelltown as an area, and people instead of maybe just popping down past Craig for the afternoon to come and visit us, now we're seeing people, it's a day, maybe 2 days, and if they can end up spending a week here to visit all the other distilleries instead of having trying ferries to go elsewhere, great. It'll be good for the town, good for tourism, hotels, restaurants. Everybody benefits from it. If it means we look after our staff pretty well, I think here. You've spoken to them all this week.
It's been amazing.
There's certainly good benefits at Springbank. So if new distilleries were trying to, I guess, poach our staff, it means they're going to have good benefits as well, which is ultimately good for everyone.
Yep. So, I mean, you're embracing it. And I know that there's other things that you're involved in, or maybe we get to speak to the other guys about the fact that you're this kind of rising tide lifting all boats philosophy, this attitude that's happening in Campbelltown right now. And exactly what you're saying, getting people, instead of just popping in and out for a quick grab at the shop, a quick tour or something, but actually stopping and staying and taking it in, spending longer times. You're doing really kind of deep dive tours, really different takes on experiences here at Springbank. And I have to say, I know a lot of people are struggling to get Springbank generally, and there's lots of special releases that are gone before we even see a bottle. But if you come to the shop here, there's always beautiful whiskey that you can take away with you. There's never nothing in that shop. The tours, the tastings, you've always got the ability. Over my shoulder here, over there, we've got some of the core range and some really special ones, local barleys. You can buy an entire flight of local barleys here at the distillery at very, very reasonable prices. So there's a real long-term vibe, a real long-term, continuing to carry that candle. You said flag bearer, to carry that forward for the next generation. That may be because you're independent or whatever, but that's not common today. What's shocking to me is how much it bleeds into the liquid, how we can taste it. It's not just a business philosophy, it's a whiskey philosophy. What would you say to the people out there that see the product on the shelf, but they don't have it at the 52, 54, 55 pounds RRP? An independent retailer, I think, should be able to get 54, 55 pounds for a bottle of Springbank 10. I don't mind that, I love it. But some places out there on the planet, it's not. We're seeing it at retail at really, really high prices.
Yeah, and it's a difficulty. It's something we hate to see, and we kind of encourage people to get in contact with us, whether it's in the UK or in their home market, and let us know. And quite often we will follow up. And to be honest, quite often it can be a retailer that's not part of our official supply chain, but they've possibly just gone into another retailer, bought it, and then marked it up for double the price.
Yeah.
And it'll still maybe sell, and it's always nice for them to have Springbank on the shelf. In the UK, where we sell directly to retailers, if we find a retailer is inflating prices inappropriately, we'll give them a warning, and if they continue to do so, we'll stop supplying to them ultimately.
Wow. Okay.
So we're quite hard. I mean, struggled to keep Springbank 10 in that shop in there. So
yes, you do.
why would we send it out for someone else to exploit?
Yeah.
We're quite happy to have any excuse to find more for our own shop. So that's probably the biggest change in the job that I've seen in the 10 years I've been, whereas before we were out there promoting it. Now we're almost sort of guardians and, monitoring things as much as possible across the world to ensure that people aren't looking at a very short-term view of what they're doing and seeing it as a commodity.
Yep.
And, ultimately, we want Springbank to be run in a way that, ultimately maybe our children will be working here.
Yes.
And have the same opportunities that we've got. So we don't want any sort of short-term nonsense that's going to disrupt that. And
I think it's not just about, you worrying about the fact that you're not charging that money. Why should anybody else? But you're also probably concerned about the optics there. Springbank is suddenly in some markets looking like a really expensive product when that is not true. The product that you're putting out there is actually fairly priced for what it is, for what it takes to get it from that malt floor to that 10-year-old or whatever it is. Your pricing is fair. I've always said it. I remember the launch of the Kilkerran 16 in 2020, and you guys put it out there at 60, 65 pounds. That, for a beautiful, beautiful malt whiskey, that's the price of a 16-year-old. It's almost like a yardstick to measure every other 16-year-old. And many of them that are out there are not made with 100 people putting it together. Many of them are made in a very automated way. And I think that is the kind of, from an enthusiast perspective, I'm not going to ask you to comment on that because you can only comment on what you make here and what you do. But that's a fascinating comparison for me. A 10-year-old whiskey, there's lots of 10-year-old whiskies out there that are much less expensive than your 10-year-old, but they don't sell like your 10-year-old does because your 10-year-old is integrity forward, flavour forward, natural whiskey. Will that ever change? It's natural whiskey is very, very important to you, right?
Oh yeah, there's absolutely no plans to
How would you
change
define
anything.
natural whiskey? I just use that term all the time.
Yeah, I guess for us it's small batch, relatively small batch. It's obviously non-chill filtered. It's natural colour. Not bottled at 40%. We bottle at 46%. I think in an ideal world we'd love to bottle at cask strength, but 46 seems pretty good, and it's easier when you're ordering 2 years worth of labels to have a fixed strength.
Sure. Efficiency is someplace, right?
And the 10-year-old for us is, again, it's the flag bearer for the distillery. The distillery, it's a good caricature of a Campbelltown whiskey. It's robust, it's complex. It's perfect for us. A really good representation of our distillery.
It absolutely is, and I think Zach Andrews is saying I can thank Aquaviti for my love of Springbank. Well, whoever it is that you're picking it up from, and it tends not to be something that you have to work at to love. It's usually a very, very quick, eye-opening thing. Springbank, the density of flavour, the integrity. It's Zach, I'm just glad that you're enjoying it, buddy. Good to see you. And Nick Gascoigne is saying, great to see you and David at the Washback. Apologies if this has been discussed. I arrived late. But could Springbank and Glengyle run a parallel 12 months production? Well, Nick, there's going to be a fellow on a wee bit later, and we're going to ask that question directly and say, what's the problem? What's going on? And I think as the discussions of the night unfurl, you're going to work out what the problems are and how they have to be considered and measured and planning for the future, especially when it comes to the setup here at Springbank, is significant, and changes like what you're proposing are pretty seismic, but we will draw, and hopefully Finlay will be able to answer some of that for us a wee bit better. So before I let you off the hook then, we've talked about the whiskey. We're talking about whiskey that we can't get. We'll talk about the theme throughout tonight is the reasons that we can't get it is because people have worked out that it's fabulous and it's fairly priced and all of these things. I'm sitting here on a whiskey school and I've had the week of my life. It's not even finished yet. I've got an exam tomorrow, as I say. a fantastic experience. People keep asking, how is it? How is it? And it's difficult. There are not enough ways to express how grateful I am. I've paid for this. I paid, and it was not inexpensive. It was a considerable amount of money. And then you come here and you see what you're getting for your money, and it's just like, it's not even worth talking about. It's fantastic, and it's unique, and nothing else like it exists. And here I'm evangelizing about something once more that we can't get. What's happening with the Whisky School currently? I put my name down with my friend Bill, who's here with me, in 2018. 5 years. We'd forgotten that that it was even a thing, and when the email came through, right?
So the Whisky School is very popular. I think it's one of these incredible business models where people pay us a good bit of money to come and work for us and make our whiskey.
Yes.
So something's happened there.
Yes.
It's gone well for us.
Well, I mean, but the fact at the same time is that that's, I know you're making a joke that's quite likely, and I don't feel like I've made whiskey this week. I feel like I've been involved in every stage of making whiskey. I've touched it. I've been able to understand it a bit more and really see that. I mean, just the effort, and just to come in every day and make it. How important it must be then for you to get the feedback from people like us that were loving it, and how important it is for you to get the feedback to you and the staff and the team that make it. I remember a discussion with you. Do you mind if it was a private discussion you and I had, and I asked how your things were going. It was during the pandemic, and you were talking, and it was how crazy it was, how difficult it was to keep up with demand. And you mentioned that what's happening is that you used to just have only visitors that were interested in telling you how amazing your product was, and now you're starting to see people just wanting to get their hands on your product. And how important it is to get feedback to you and the team who work so hard, that their effort and the way that you're doing things is, people are genuinely loving the product. And I think that's one of the kind of negatives, isn't it? Because there's a lot of hoarding going on. I'll hold my hand up and say, when I can get my 10-year-old now, even if I've got one on the shelf, I'm grabbing my opportunity to have it, and I'm putting it behind the other one, because I know that it might not be that easy to get another one.
And especially with some of the older expressions, you're almost too scared to open it or finish it. You don't know where
can I replace it,
right?
Get the
next
so
one.
I'm not coming to you and saying that last 18-year-old release was seismic, you know, because is that, do you think that has an impact? Or
certainly, you know, ideally you want people to be able to buy your product and drink it and say that was pretty good, I'll go and buy another one now. But what we see now is very much that people will finish it, and they, you know, by the nature of our annual releases, they might have to wait the best part of a year to do that, and then, you know, it can be tricky. They might have to go into a ballot or something to get the whiskey. So I think, you know, kind of one of the points you're making is you can come to Campbelltown, and if you make the pilgrimage to Campbelltown to Springbank, you will always get some good whiskey in that distillery shop on site. Whether it's, you know, an 18-year-old or the handful from the Demijohn, or these cage bottles that we have, there's always good whiskey here, and that kind of goes back to our kind of philosophy, is trying to attract people to Campbelltown. So, you know, people can see, maybe they won't have the chance to go and do the Whisky School, but they'll just see it's called all the orange sort of jackets sort of buzzing about the place. There's lots of activities, there's a bustle, there's a sort of sense of place here. You can only really pick up if you're here. So if people want to come to Campbelltown to get the Springbank 18, whatever, go for it.
What about the people that are hearing me talking about how great the school is then, as an example? Even the ones that are prepared to put their name down and kind of consider waiting quite a long time, is that even a possibility for them?
Yeah, so I guess the sort of pandemic sort of really kind of interrupted things there. It meant that we sort of couldn't get people onto the Whisky School, so we increased, sort of doubled the term time. So normally, I think previously we did something like 10 weeks, now it's up to 20 weeks. And that's, you know, that's quite a lot. It's quite intense for all the production guys who are speaking to.
So this is a summer season of Whisky School. You used to have 10 every year, and then because of the hiatus, let's say, when you've started back up again, essentially doubled it.
Yeah, because we saw the waiting list, all these people, and we thought, well,
Yes.
it's going to take 10 years to get through that.
Yes.
So let's stop people getting onto waiting lists now.
Why
Work through this, and then
why aren't more people doing exactly the way that you're doing it? Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
yeah, and you know, I don't think it's 6 people's every week. I think that works quite well. Any more than that, you'd maybe start. It's like diluting the experience too much.
Yeah.
So I don't see us sort of increasing the sort of class size, if you will, or anything like that. And yeah, we'll just slowly sort of make our way through that waiting list.
So will the waiting list come down? Will it be open again? Will it?
Yeah, I think when we make a good dent in the waiting list, it'll certainly open up. And again, we've got jobs sort of relying on the Whisky School. You've got the Mary and Sandra in the Still Guest House.
Yeah,
the unsung heroes.
Stars, the
so we've
as well.
We've got people whose jobs rely on the Whisky School,
yes.
And people will come and experience the Whisky School as you've described, and be lifelong ambassadors and tell other people about Springbank, about the experience. Maybe they'll buy a bottle of Springbank off the shelf if they can find it, or they might even come to Campbelltown, and that's kind of the self-fulfilling kind of goal that we're trying to accomplish here.
Well, at the risk of seeming like I'm not selling it, but I'm offering it as a potential replacement, because there's a couple of schemes that you've come up with. One is, what was it, eat, sleep, drown, repeat, or something like that. So again, in the philosophy of you getting people into the town, getting them excited for the distillery, the product, but getting them to stop and pause in the town, stay a while, eat at the restaurant, stay in the local accommodation hotels or whatever. Tell us about that, because that sounds like something that gets people kind of almost somewhere close to a whiskey school type experience, but on a smaller module, a much more easy to accommodate thing, right?
Yeah, exactly that. So in between sort of periods of Whisky School, we do these sort of enhanced tour packages where you stay in our guest house. You do a full sort of immersive experience, I guess. You do, the full Springbank tour. You go to parts of the distillery that I've not been to before. You're everywhere, and warts and all, pun intended.
Yes.
Glengyle warehouse.
Warts, okay, yeah.
Cadenhead's warehouse tastings. You see everything that J&A Mitchell has to offer. And first-class hospitality, lunches in a bar here, getting to taste new and forthcoming releases. So
you're putting things in place. You're hearing this is difficult. We need to come up with other ways of accommodating this. Mm-hmm. Making sure that we keep these people interested, that we show them that we're still earnestly trying to accommodate these challenges that you're facing, and you're here for the long term.
Yeah, exactly. We appreciate, Campbelltown's a long way from everything else. So if we can attract people to come and visit us, we want to take care of you, show you Campbelltown hospitality, and give you an experience, hopefully, that you've immersed yourself in, that you're going to kind of hold on to forever. And that's what it's all about for us.
There's a genuine sense, everybody that you meet, whether it's the people that's looking after you in the accommodation, or whether it's people you meet in the malt floors, whether it's people you meet just walking through the courtyard, and everywhere in between, everyone's asking you, are you having a good time? Are you enjoying yourself? And everybody they will go out their way to accommodate you. Where do you need to go? I'll take you there. It's just been fantastic. Where I thought I would be, that we would be a bother, it's been the exact opposite, and they seem to they're on board with the whole idea, the whole concept. It's a blinder. It's fantastic. You've got a model where people are paying you decent amounts of money, coming away and having an experience that all they want to do is, when they leave again, is potentially look at putting their name back down to do it again. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's closed even for us, for everyone. But that's got to be a significant measure of success.
I think it shows we're doing something right.
So what we're saying here is, it's difficult to get Springbank. If you make the pilgrimage, you're always going to get Springbank here. There's always going to be something for you. There's no 18-year-old in the shop, I have to be honest. I was looking for it myself. But there is Kilkerras on the shelf, the 16 sitting on the shelf right now. We've got Longrow on the shelf. We've got the demijohns there, the handfulls there. There's plenty delicious whiskey.
And if you can't buy it in the shop, you can buy it by the dram.
You just come in here, and the prices by the dram in here are ridiculously reasonable in price as well. So you don't leave with this idea that you've made the pilgrimage and you're being really bumped over the head with it when you get to the distillery. You're going to leave here feeling exactly fulfilled as a fan, as an enthusiast, as a curious whiskey botherer. I genuinely believe that. David, I think we all like to have a whinge because we feel like we're not happy we can't get the thing that we love, right? That's the truth.
It's human nature.
You have to feel those whinges. But it's not just a case of having thick skin. What I've worked out over the last week is that there are significant steps being put in place to try and overcome it. But much in the way of how you've managed to arrive here, you're not going to do it in a hurry. It's going to be in a considered, structured way. So much like the whiskey school, everyone's going to need to wait for the list opening up again. But in the meantime, there are tours getting put in place that are brand new, fresh thinking tours, ways to get people to experience more than just a kind of 45-minute walk around and a dram at the end. It's much, much more hands-on than that. Listen, buddy, I wish you all the very best going forward. And I hope that you do get those folk coming in saying, still love your whiskey. We'll get some of your other pals up here in a wee minute. And I don't think the questions are going to get any easier, to be honest, but that's what we're here for. Thank you, and I'll see you all in a wee second. Well, Finley's he's here. He's trying to find his he's trying to find a dram or something. Is this one you're bringing for both of us? What do we have here? Yeah. Well, here again, another favourite. Thank you. I'm just going to reach under and grab a clean glass too, so you can pour for both of us. Finley Ross, nice to see you. So we've just spent our time with a Director of Sales and Marketing for Kilkerran, for Glengyle, and for Springbank, and David Allen. And what we've got here is Finley Ross, who is the Director of Production, would be the title.
Director.
These are handsome pours as well. Thank you very much. What was that, sorry?
Director of Production Director, either or.
Either way. So okay, that's a title. I'm going to jump into the comments here because I've been ignoring these guys, but it's brilliant. Thanks for your support, so many of you in. But what does that entail? What does that Director of Production where?
So I oversee production at both sites, so Springbank and Glengyle, and get involved in the Cadenhead sides a little bit as well. But primarily it's to do with the overall production schedule of Springbank Distillery, Glengyle Distillery, the maltings, everything associated with that, including the bottling side as well.
Fantastic, yeah, and that's something that's easy to forget as well. Tucked away to the left-hand side, there's a bottling hall here, and believe me, we've been getting our hands dirty in the bottling hall as well, seeing all of it. So as the session goes on, I think we're going to move inevitably towards maybe a bit of a Cadenheads discussion a wee bit later on. Is it Cadenheads or Cadenheads?
I'm a Cadenheads man, but I'm willing to be stood corrected by anybody who's got
no problem. So you're not going to complain about somebody pronouncing it wrong, right?
No, I won't.
I tend to say Cadenheads, but since I've been here, I'm starting to say Cadenheads a lot more because obviously that's how it's said locally. Regardless, I think that when Ranald appears a wee bit later, I think we will try and take the discussion a wee bit into the Cadenheads thing. I think there's things to talk about here. But for now, we're going to kind of just pick up from the story of the last few years that David shared with us, that you've got this hockey stick increase in demand. It's that serious. If you could suddenly put triple your content out there on the shelf, it's impossible. Tomorrow, it would be taken immediately, right? It would be purchased, more or less. you have to, I guess it's on your shoulders to sit down with the team and work out, how are we going to move forward? How are we going to accommodate this? Have you done that already? Is it happening? Because I see a hell of a lot of people here. I see a hell of a lot of barley around the place. But whiskey takes a long, long time to go from that barley on that malt floor to this in the glass. Thank you for pouring this for me.
Yeah, no
Cheers.
problem. Pleasure.
Cheers, Najwa.
Yeah, so I think I've not been here quite as long as David. It'll be 8 years in October that I've been with the company. And one of the first things that I was tasked with when I moved into this side of the business was we wanted to make more Springbank, but we wanted to make it in exactly the same way as we've always made Springbank. So those two things aren't necessarily conflicting with each other, but they require a lot of consideration. So when I joined the company, sort of production year in 2016, what happened was we had a team of guys that went and made malt for about 4 months of the year.
Yep.
Once they'd filled up all the malt bins, they would then jump across and mash and distill at Springbank, mash and distill at Glengyle, and then they would just jump back and repeat the process again.
Yeah.
And so there was an inherent bottleneck in there in that it's one team of people. And once the malt bins are full, there's nowhere else to put any more malt, so you have to go and start making whiskey. So to me, the primary place to target was, can we have a separate team that just makes malt and free up our production team just to mash and distill?
Yes.
And that's what we built up towards. So say 2016, the model was the sort of 4 months malting and the rest of the time making whiskey. 2017 was a bit of a transition year where we hired additional staff and trained them entirely in making malt under the tutelage of the guys who'd been making it for years. And then in 2018 was the year that we kind of ripped the plaster off and said, okay, we are now going to do full-time malting. We're going to do 9 months production at Springbank, and we're going to do 3 months production at Glengyle off the back of that. And so in that period, we jumped from about 125,000 litres at Springbank, give or take, to the current figure of about 260 to 265,000 litres at Springbank Distillery.
Sorry, I'm just going to cover that again.
Yeah.
You've gone from 125 to 260,000 litres. You've more than doubled. But when you talk about ripping the plaster off, you're going back to 2018. That was before this. So that was a proactive step. You already saw the demand increasing. You already were under pressure. That was pre-pandemic, right?
Yeah, and I think the thing that we discussed was, historically Springbank hasn't chased the highs and lows of the industry, and it's always been self-sufficient. So it's always made whiskey when it had money, and then when there's maybe leaner years, it made a little bit less. So the production history of Springbank isn't a linear or even a flat line. It jumps up and down a bit like a roller coaster, just in terms of what happened the year before to the next year.
Sure. Okay, yeah.
So the first thing we wanted to do was try and smooth that out to start with, but we also wanted to smooth it out from a higher point. And so that was one of the first discussions that was had when I first joined the company, was we want to make more whiskey, but we want to make it the way that Springbank's always made it, and we want to build in a bit more consistency into the production schedule. And so I think in terms of it predating the pandemic, it wasn't the hardest thing to jump to, because we already made what we felt was a relatively small amount of whiskey given the facility and the site that we had. There were obstacles that needed to be overcome to get us to that point, but we felt that even the jump in production that we were talking about wasn't going to saturate the market or anything like that.
I wonder if people are shouting that they can't hear you. I just spotted that. So yeah.
Sorry.
You're not. It was almost a bit of prescience there, but you didn't know the effect that the pandemic was going to have on demand for the product, how that was going to exacerbate things. But you'd already made. I remember there'd been jokes back at the time, and I remember there were kind of people saying, "Well, I see here Springbank are making more whiskey now. How's that happened? They put on another shift," and kind of tongue in cheek things like that. But of course, when you think about it, you can't just put in another shift. And if I was to be glib with you, I would say, well, just buy in some malt. Just buy in some malt, or can you not just kind of I don't know, just why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you just get a maltster to do it to your spec or something?
Yeah, I think the inherent identity in Springbank is the 100% of the process done on site. And so there's always this conflicting thought, that, okay, it'd be much easier to do X or Y or Z. But as soon as you start to invoke that thought, then you start to go, okay, well, we're changing fundamentally what Springbank is. And that was really at the heart of any discussion about expanding production was, we want more whiskey, but we want it made in the exact same way. And that included making all of our own malt, not changing anything to do with mash times or fermentation times or distillation rates or anything like that. It was just utilising more weeks in the year, doing it exactly the same way that we'd done it. And as I say, the starting point to that was, well, we need more malt, as a base to be able to build off from that.
Yeah. And anything that you do, so if you lift the bottleneck in the front, they're clearly, unless it's by opening up more hours, you're just moving the bottleneck a bit further down, aren't you? You're just going to give yourself further problems down the line.
Yeah, and it's a situation we find ourselves in now, in that, we've doubled production in 2018. We run Springbank for 9 months and we run Glengyle for 3 months. And if we want to make more Springbank the way we currently do, we have to make less at Glengyle and vice versa. So we've doubled everything and we've moved everything forward, but we've just reached another barrier that we need to overcome if we want to go beyond that point.
And it's quite an odd or a eerie thing to say. To see it when we visited here last year, I was aware of it, and it's the same's happened this week. Is that you go around this really, really hive of activity that's around Springbank, and then you go up to this kind of really quite contrasting site at Glengyle. That's where this is a bit of a kind of up and down and round the house. It's a maze. Springbank Distillery is a wee bit of a maze, and it takes you a couple of days to get your bearings. You go up to Glengyle and you've got this really linear kind of start to finish thing, and there's almost an eeriness about it because it's silent. And you're sitting there, you're looking at this silent distillery thinking, but of course, as Donner Pass Whisky Tim has just asked, does Springbank malt floor supply Glengyle? Does it supply Kilkerran too?
It does. So historically, it supplied all the malt to Glengyle. I'll tell a bit of a slight sob story in that. As part of the expansion towards 2018 and 2017, we went to go to our malting period. So we had no malt in the bins. We were just about to start a malting period, and we had some major structural issues with the malt floor at Springbank that needed remedied immediately.
The reinforcement,
Yeah, and so we were in a situation where that was going to take a number of weeks. We had no malt sitting in the bins, and we had 2 distilleries that couldn't run because their malt supply hadn't started yet. So one of the things we did at that point was to speak to Mr. Wright and see if it would be possible to buy in some malt for Glengyle to operate it in 2017, which he was happy to do. And the reasoning was that, well, Glengyle has never had its own maltings in the way that it was set up. It's always relied on malt coming from Springbank, so we would never compromise on the Springbank side. But in order to get us through this bump in the road, it'd be willing to accept the fact that we needed to buy in malt made to the specification at Springbank for Glengyle.
Okay.
And so Springbank supplies all of Kilkerran's main malt to it, but heavily peated and a tiny period of unpeated production that we do at Kilkerran is supplied from external maltsters.
Okay, that's interesting. And I suppose, did you notice a difference there? Did you notice a significant, or was the spirit at Glengyle, did that hold out? How did it affect? Is it yet to manifest, or?
We had no detectable differences. So the first thing we did was we had historical samples of our own malt, and we sent them away to maltsters and said, we want you to make this.
Sure.
And so that was matched as closely as they could. I don't think it's any secret that the peat that we use here at Springbank is from the sort of north and northeast of Scotland.
Sure.
And luckily the maltster that we worked with was also securing their peat from the same locations. And so we were able to get a really good match, which I don't think will have any material impact on the Kilkerran from 2017. As I say, we went back to using malt from Springbank for the normal Kilkerran, if you want to call it that. And then we retained a heavily peated and unpeated malt from an external supplier.
So, and also that malt, with the exception of local barley, I would imagine, is also from the northeast as well. Is that would, so the barley?
Yes, so the barley that we buy in at Springbank to run our maltings comes from a company called Highland Grain, which is a kind of buying conglomerate in the sort of northeast of Scotland.
Okay.
Apart from the local barley, as you say, which is obviously sourced in Campbelltown. So
is there, given the fact that you've just thank you for the candor as well, just saying that, okay, these things are genuine things that happens. If you've got a malt floor that needs reinforcement, you're not going to put people on it to make malted whiskey, but you have to continue to make whiskey. So it's interesting that happened. But it's interesting that you prioritise the Springbank thing. So does that not give you, potentially could give you the confidence that there's maybe a different route in the future to help, maybe at least at Coquerin, maybe open things up a wee bit? Or
yeah, so I think
simplistic.
No, I mean, I think if we address the elephant in the room, which is you've got two distilleries, neither of which run full time. Why don't you run them both full time? The thing that would help most with that is if we run the malt and tea at Springbank full time for Springbank, that doesn't leave any capacity really for Glengyle as things stand. So we need to find an alternative way to supply malt to Glengyle. And I think David touched upon it briefly when he was up speaking to you earlier, but we would look to produce malt at Glengyle, but in a slightly different way. So we wouldn't propose reinstalling old malt floors based on the space that we've got there. We would probably look at something like a more modern malt drum system that can produce malt at Glengyle to the specification that we want. And, you know, to touch on the additional distillery that we mentioned that we've got planned for the future, would also have capacity to supply malt to that distillery as well. So I think these are the kind of things that we're talking about just now and planning for in the future.
I can tell you there's a lot of folk out there on the malt floors, the Ravens, the Daniels, the Johns, and the guys that we've been hanging about with that might be quite relieved to hear that they're not going to have to shovel and steep and turn. And it's been, handling the malt is way more massive than I ever considered it could be. It's just, and especially when you come and do the school, so much of the curriculum, so much of that week's schedule is focused on barley, things that you cannot do, you can't touch. And most of the other tours and distilleries that you do, it's really, really, truly eye-opening. Let's jump in and see if we've got any questions from this. I'm ignoring you tonight. I do apologise. I hope you appreciate it. I hope I just want to get as much out of these guys while I've got them willing to come in and give up their Thursday night for us as I can. Eric Waite Whisky Studies, you welcomed Eric Waite just a few weeks back. He was here in July. There was also the Challenge of Warehouse Room. The new one is filling up fast. That's right, 7,000 capacity, brand new warehouse, all shiny new, massive. 5,000 casks are already in there. Is that the right numbers? I don't know if that's...
Yeah, but 5,500, and that's correct. You know, you almost, if you're thinking about expansion, you have to start from the end point backwards. And so the number one issue that we face at the moment is warehousing space on site. And we do 100% of our warehousing here in Campbelltown, and that's something we're not willing to compromise on. So we know that at current rates of production, we're going to run out of space within the next maybe 2 or 3 years if we do absolutely nothing. If you suddenly double production, that number comes down to 1.5 years. And so you kind of have to fix the warehouse storage issue and work your way back almost from there. And that's something that we're doing at the moment. We've got plans for various different buildings around Campbelltown that we're going to look to move some things off site that aren't casks to free up space on site for casks. We've got plans for a new bottling and dispatch facility up beside Glengyle, which will not only provide a much more purpose-built facility for our bottling operations, but also provide storage space for dry goods and case goods, which will again free up space on site for casks. So these are the kind of things that we're looking at just now and discussing all the time.
That's good to hear. There's investment happening, and it's much more kind of bigger picture investment than I would be considering just by walking around. And you're absolutely right. It's just, and Eric's made a great point. We were in the part of the whisky school is that you go in there, you've filled the casks, you go in there, you've got to rack them, and I'm standing in there and I'm going, this is already a pretty full, and we'd filled 60 casks, I think. 60 casks.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take many of those operations for you to realize how you could quickly use the capacity up of a 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 cask warehouse. And it does kind of make you think about, I like just drinking whiskey rather than worrying about how it's going to be made, you know.
I used to do that too, right?
That's right. And then hopefully you can still do both, right? Teddy KGB is asked an interesting one. And somebody asked a wee bit earlier on about the follow-up to the Pedro Jimenez, I think it was a PX 10-year-old special Springbank release that came out last year. And there was talk about this being a sherry series. When I was speaking to you out in the courtyard, you did a very relaxed, very candid question and answer session with us. It was clear to me that your brain was speaking not of the contemporary releases where we are today. You were very focused on talking about 18 months from now. You know, you're working off a different spreadsheet, I think, from most other folk, and you know it's Is this a thing that you have to curate, ranges like that? Terry KGB is asking about, obviously, about a Coquelin 20-year-old. I hadn't heard such a thing. I've heard a rumour about an 18-year-old. So we can ask about all of that, and we can ask about, is this your job? Is this part of your remit to plan these things?
Yeah, I would say it's a combined effort. So you've spoken to David, obviously, for 40 minutes,
Yes.
something like that.
Was it?
Something around that mark, at least, yeah.
It's easy to talk to David.
And Ranald's going to come up after me. I would say that any of those kind of big picture decisions, the three of us sit down and discuss them, and we all put in our own perspectives and try and reach a conclusion that's agreeable to everybody. So, I'm coming in with the production head in terms of where do we need to be with this, that, and this, but ultimately, it's down to these guys what they want the product range to look like and the recipes to look like and when they want things to be released. So I kind of sit there more and prepare options and say, okay, if we do this, we can maybe do that. And if we move this here, this could maybe happen. But ultimately, what's easiest for production isn't maybe necessarily what's best for Springbank in terms of a final product making out to the consumer. So discussions like that happen as a sort of round table chat. But yeah, certainly things like, I think the Sherry series, I think is what was being touched upon.
Yes, the PX 10-year-old last year, yeah.
That's something that, has had to be planned out quite far in advance, not just in terms of securing the casks, but also identifying the parcels that we were going to use to be finished in these casks or have a second maturation in these casks, and then in what order we were going to release them. And then the last part of that is just the constant review. So just because you've got an idea in your head about how you might want a series to run, the spirit has to be following that trajectory as well. So
you're not going to release it just because you plan to. You're going to have to make sure that it passes muster, right?
Absolutely. So I think if we take the PX, for example, the biggest concern among all three of us was, is the PX going to become super dominant way too quickly? So we've got plans to leave it for 3 years in PX, but is it after 18 months going to be at a position where we think, okay, that's perfect? And we've always left ourselves open to the option of, okay, well, if we get to a position that we see something like that, let's put it into refill bourbon and just smooth it out. Or maybe let's change the order if we think one thing's progressing better than something else.
Flip it.
So I think personally, we were pleasantly surprised by how well Springbank stood up to a bit of a PX secondary maturation. It's something that any of the three of us are going to make a ubiquitous product of Springbank out the back of. But in terms of how well that turned out, we were really pleasantly surprised. And so with everything else that we're going to release in the series, we're reviewing it on a fairly regular basis with a view to leaving all options open depending on how the spirit's progressing.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I love a contrast. I love I like being able to put PX in front of other people because it's really a full-on experience. For me, I need to see more bourbon, please. When are you going to bring out a bourbon series? Or what about Teddy KGB's comment about the Coquelin? I'd heard an 18-year-old, but it's possible for you to have an 18-year-old out there given the age of the product. But what about, is there any truth in that, or are you sticking to 16?
I think 16 will remain the oldest core range product that's out there in any significant volume. Obviously, when you get a distillery that's been revived and makes it to something like 20 years old, that's something we would like to mark. But again, kind of falling back onto the roundtable discussion stuff, I'll be led by the sales guys about how they want to present Coquelin as it gets older and do my best to facilitate that.
That sounds to me like some of the fun decisions, though. Sitting working out what your products are going to be for the future. That I know it's going to put a pressure on the stocks that's available and things, and it's every action that you take has a consequence. I understand, but that's got to be surely some of the fun part of it. The fun part for me this week has been able to taste some of it. I do have some Springbank and Kilkerrans and things at home, but I'm being very, very careful with them now for the reasons. So it's encouraging to hear that you're putting things in place and from multiple different directions. Investment in new premises, new warehousing, maltings, taking these actions in order to keep the whiskey floating in the future. Not a lot of people are aware, and it's good to see that there's a continuity and consistency despite very recent changes that I'm going to pick up and talk about with Ranald in a wee bit. Coquelin 16 is fab, says Alistair McPhail. Alistair, so good to see you, and buddy, hope you're keeping well. And Jimmy Legacy. And we should also mention that not every Springbank has always been fantastic for everyone. Some finishes can ruin any whiskey. Well, certainly from an objective perspective, and I kind of hinted at that there, that a PX whiskey for me from any distillery needs to be. But I do appreciate that, as I said, I can put it into some people and it blows them away. It's very interesting to do the blending session today. And there were 7 of us around a table blending whiskies, and we had first fill bourbon, we had rum, we had Sauterne, we had refill sherry and first fill sherry all round, and we're making up our own bottle. It's part of the experience, and it's fabulous to do. But what's really interesting is you line up these bottles to take photos and things. They're all next to each other, and it's like a rainbow of colours. And you know, there was me and 1 or 2 other guys had these really, really pale makeups. We'd gone really kind of cask light, let's say. And then a few other of the team had just gone, they've obviously just dosed it with the first fill sherry. That's to there. They're literally blending their own whiskey. So I think there's a place for all of these things. The PX was a super dark expression. What's the next one in the sherry series?
I've got Palo Cortado coming out this year. So personally, that's
this year.
This year, yeah. Sorry, I'm dealing in financial years here. Yes, this year there's a Palo Cortado coming out. Personal experience-wise, Palo Cortado is a sherry type that I didn't know a huge amount about before I started working here. And the best expressions of sherry matured and secondary matured whiskies that I've tried have invariably come from a Palo Cortado cask in terms of the sherry influence, in my personal opinion. So that's the one I was most excited about when we started this series, and it's the one I hoped would turn out as good as I think hopefully people will see when it gets out there.
I think my experience with Palo Cortado has been super, super exciting as well. Absolutely loved it. Distell is now CDH, of course. They managed to bring out a couple of great, the Bunnahavens and Deanston and things from Palo Cortado. Everybody connected with it. It's going to be fantastic to be able to try a Springer from Palo Cortado. I look forward to that. I wonder if I'm going to need to make the drive down to Campbelltown to secure a bottle of it. Peter Lee is saying, good evening, Roy. You're in Whiskey Nirvana now, for sure. Well, I've just finished work, sipping a Springbank Society 5-year-old. You're on theme, Peter. Good to see you, buddy, and I hope you didn't work too hard. Actually, for a change, I hope you did, because I've been working hard this week too. Good to see you. Greg is saying, great question, Molander. Aquaviti, can you ask about the Springbank Society? Is it going to reopen to new members anytime in the near future? So I suppose it's a valid question. Would you be the right person to ask about that, or should I have grabbed David when he was up?
Ranald would probably be a good person to speak to about that as well.
You're just going to bat it down the line.
That's my favourite job, is batting things to the sales team.
Right, I'm going to add it. You know what? The trouble is, for anybody that's still in, probably Ranald's going to be the one that's left with perhaps the most crunchy things. So we'll just add it to the list. Society.
As long as his list keeps growing and mine shrinks.
Well, he already had the longest list. Listen, Finlay, like I said to you, throughout this week, I've been able to speak to you more than I have in the past. This is the first time that we've actually met face-to-face. It was always virtual up until now, and it's been a privilege. Like every experience I've had, and connecting with David and the team in the past as well, everyone here, Nicole, Fiona, it's just the openness, candid. We tend to find in whiskey, when there's knowledge and there's understanding behind it, there's nothing actually to hide. There's only things to share and explain and describe. It's been a pleasure, an absolute pleasure, and I'm looking forward to everything
the future's
got for us all.
Cheers, Roy.
Finlay, thanks
very much.
And we'll now grab Ranald and see what Ranald has got to share with us. Bear with us, he's got the stickier questions. See you in a second. That video that I've got there as a wee vignette to cover the changes of hot seat here is obviously not long enough. But I don't mind waiting a wee bit longer when somebody's bringing you another fantastic dram. Is this the newest Kilkerran 16?
It is, yes.
Dramface just reviewed this today. It was Ramsey that put out the review, and I won't tell you the score, you have to go and see for yourself. dramface.com, but he put out a wonderful review, and I have to back up everything that he said because myself and the team at the Whisky School have been drinking Kilkerran 16 all week. It's able to buy at the shop here, and it's just a fantastic whiskey. Thank you so much. I need a
glass
clean.
for you, Roy. I will
There's
get you
plenty
one.
glasses. That's not going to stop us. Whiskey with Molly Bennett saying, have I fallen asleep and dreaming? Springbank, Palo Cortado. Yeah, you're not dreaming. It's something on the road ahead. I wish you all the very best, Ben, at trying to get your hands on one. Hellswood is saying, can you ask if the distillery will be running at the beginning of October, Aquaviti? Well, you are starting to come up to some changes, so you're as good a guy to ask us anything about that. And Jimmy Legg is saying, does winning Best Distillery Awards always was encouraged the Springbank staff at all? Are they looking forward to winning again? Good questions coming in. Ranald,
Right.
thank you so much for stepping up.
Pleasure.
Forward. Once more, a wee bit like Finlay. We're familiar faces to each other,
Yeah.
but not in real life. So it's been a pleasure to meet you finally this week.
Likewise.
The openness, the candidness. I gave you a bullet list of things that I wanted to talk about, and you're just like, yeah. And I was like, are any of these difficult to talk about? And you're like, nothing that we don't get all the time, everywhere, from every direction.
Yeah.
But I think for our community, for the people that tune into the vPub and things like that, it's an opportunity to talk about things that affect them. And what our discussion revolved around is the position that I have where in Cameron, Cameron,
Yes.
him and I had we had a fantastic session as part of the Whisky School. And we talked about, he was aware of some of the things that I was saying, and I was sharing my opinion on social media with only half the information. Mm-hmm. Because I'm working on behalf of the community, of the enthusiasts. This is why things like this are important, because we get to sit down, we get to understand why things are so. There's nothing hidden, it's just the dynamics. These are the challenges that everyone's facing. There's no cover-ups in it. These are why it's happening. So we got to talk about some really quite interesting things that's been happening in developments. Before I go on to ask you what's happening in Europe, what's happening for Cadden Heads as a strategy, what the struggle that you've faced in the last year, before I go into that, I'm trying to keep the folk hanging on here. I'm going to ask you there's a couple of good questions that came in there. Jimmy Legg asked, does winning the Distillery Awards at the Oswas encourage the Springbank staff at all? Are they looking forward to winning again? Listen, I'm going to try and show you. It won't see you, but we've got a wee green room thing going on here. And I add it and I try and show you, you might just catch in the top left of the screen there. That's how much it means to them. They've got it hanging up here in the Washback Bar. So it's clear to me from the first time that you won that award, it was here on the bar top. When you won your second one, you're like, okay, we need to get these up on the wall now.
Yep.
Is this type of recognition, because that's very much community sourced.
Yeah.
That is the voice of your customer speaking.
It's the only recognition that really gets in our radar, far less gets us enthusiastic. We don't enter awards, we don't enter competitions.
Exactly.
Because they're marketing gigs mainly. And we, as you've covered with the boys, we don't really need to do marketing anymore. So when people get together, organise awards, and people feel that we're worthy of receiving them, that's proper recognition. That's not sharing the prizes about because you've paid to enter. It's not sharing the prizes about because you took a nice big advert in the glossy magazine. That's people who buy the whiskey, people who drink the whiskey, people who talk about the whiskey, deciding that they like you enough to nominate you, vote for you, and then give you the award.
Yeah, but what about the people that see me doing the Springbank Whisky School when there's a 5-year waiting list? Surely you just said, Roy, if you get us an Oswald, we'll get you on this. That happens, surely.
Questioning your own integrity.
Exactly.
Because, exactly. No, because we don't. You know, you've spent the week here, you've chatted to the lads. We're not into that. We're into making whiskey, and thankfully people like what
I
we
think
do.
when there are so many opportunities out there to embellish products with gold discs or whatever it may be, titles as spectacular and as granular as they become, it's understandable that a scheme like the Oswas could be seen as a wee bit cynical. But as much as I know, as tongue-in-cheek as I was there, it is absolutely the voice of the community.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why they're on the wall. You know,
Yeah.
we have won other awards in the past over
Yes.
the years, and
Yeah.
more often than not, the winning of such an award is followed up with a quick phone call. How many seats do you want at the dinner? How many, you know, what would you like to do now that you're a winner? And well, the answer's always none.
And I think,
And they don't go on the wall.
and I think our guy Jimmy Legg, being who Jimmy Legg is, and I think he's such an invested fan of course, of Springbank and things and everything. But he asked that specifically because he knows the answer. Because every time he tunes into the Oswas and it's come over to seeing you guys and having you guys accept your Oswas, there's a full crowd in this Washback Bar with their hands in the air, their glasses in the air, just being grateful and celebrating it. And and I think that means a lot to them here. And I hope it does fill their sales with positivity.
Oh, it does for sure. And it ties in with a little bit, and not to go over some of the ground you've already covered, but from my perspective, the main benefit, or one of the main benefits of Whisky School and all these other things we offer is the people who work on the ground making the whisky gaining a much greater understanding of the respect, the love, the admiration that people have for their product. You know, 15
if
years
they're not
ago,
a whiskey drinker, it's maybe abstract for them to imagine, why are these people shedding tears as they hold this barley in their mouth?
And even for the community of Campbelltown, you know, I would imagine most small Scottish towns are like this. It's probably a very Scottish trait, but well, if he makes it, or if it's made by them, it can't be that good.
That's
and
right.
Yet the visitors we get, the people who pay to come and work here and stuff, really shines a light on the fact that it is good, you know. And so for the whole community of Campbelltown, but especially the people who work here, that level of recognition, which comes from the people who are willing to pay for it, means a lot.
Yes.
We do, you know, we don't.
So I think what's happening is it's filling their sales a wee bit. I hope it does.
Absolutely.
But I think what's also happening is that it's filling the community's sales too, because we see that you receive it in such an enthusiastic way, and you do not have to. You're doing it because, no, this is good. This helps us, because we have to come in and toil. We have to come in and fight, and we have to come in and keep things the way that they are. And sometimes it must be hard to do that thing.
Yeah. And we don't, in further answer to Jimmy's question, we'd love to win it again, but we don't take it for granted or expect it, because we don't change anything about what we're doing. So,
well, one of the things that I spoke about, and I mentioned it earlier, is that it's all very well for Springbank to get in a nomination. It's going to be interesting to see if you're nominated again this year, but we also have the People's Choice that runs alongside with it. So regardless of what the nominations are, we give the people a voice, and they can speak out and say, this is what we actually drink, this is what we actually love. And when you see Springbank not just beating or topping, but it's the margin, it's so compelling right now that it's constantly, surely this is encouragement to other producers to follow a much more kind of integrity forward path. I know that that's a drum I beat every week, and apologies if I'm sounding a wee bit repetitive, but really, it just sometimes seems like it can't be that hard unless you come here and do the Whisky School and realise actually it's really hard.
There are reasons not everyone does it this way.
It's really hard. Falsgraf, good to see you. Falsgraf class is in, saying that reaction from the distillery also means a lot to the community. The respect goes both ways. This is exactly what I'm talking about.
Perfect.
And Bud Jenkins is saying, from the perspective of an experience, when is the best time to visit Springbank to see the most and have the best selection of whiskey? It goes hand in hand with Helen's question earlier when she was asking about coming at the start of October. Talk to us about your silent seasons. Talk to us about how the pattern shifts from Springbank to Glengyle, and talk to us about, is there a best time of year?
The main guide on when the best time to visit is probably, I would say, May and late August are good times to visit. Now, if you want to come in May, we have the Campbelltown Malts Festival in the third week in May. That's the best time to come and hang out and have a great time at the distillery. It's maybe not necessarily the best time to have a more private tour, a quiet.
It's not going to be intimate. It's going to be about the people.
But the couple of weeks leading up to that can be quieter. You know, it's not as busy. We're not at the height of summer, which can be a good time to visit. October, we tend to do the Springbank production January through to early to mid-September.
Okay.
And then
you've got a couple of weeks left now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we swing up to Glengyle for the period between then and Christmas.
And is it a digital switchover, or is there a ramp up for you to get started?
No, it's pretty much we finish here and
move
straight up the road and
Yeah.
get on with it. We'll always be malting here,
Yeah.
so you'll always see the malting at Springbank.
Yeah.
But if you come from certainly mid-September through to Christmas, you'll see distillation at Glengyle, malting at Springbank, but Springbank won't be.
And that gives you a
serving
time
as
to maintenance and replacement and upgrades
Yeah.
and that kind of thing along
such.
the way as
Look
well.
at whatever needs to be
Yeah.
patched up or
Yeah.
fully repaired or whatever. we're
And
doing.
I think patched up is an interesting thing, because I have to be honest with you, if you come to Springbank thinking that you're going to see a pretty shiny distillery with everything in its place, the feeling is much more of a kind of, you're having the privilege of walking through a fully active working space that comes across a wee bit like somebody referred to earlier this week, and it's been referred to in the past. There's a working museum, and everything that you see and touch is absolutely like that. Some of the things, some of the instruments that's hanging about and on the wall, some of the ropes and pulleys and sticks and fashioned hammers, and ways that the workforce is clearly imparted how the thing is made, is visible in everything you see and touch. It's almost visceral. There's something sentient about the place. It's kind of organic, and it's very alive. I don't know how to explain it better. Anybody that's toured will get what I'm talking about. Is there a kind of bias towards trying to preserve that, or is it just because in the past there's not been a lot of capital? Is it?
I think a little bit of both. Historically, it would have been don't spend a penny if you don't have to, or don't spend a pound if you can get away with spending a penny, because like a lot of the whiskey industry over the years, you made whiskey when you could afford to, and if you couldn't afford to, then you didn't. And that's why, as Finlay referred to, production's been very sporadic here. But I think the sort of almost investment and maintenance in the place has followed that pattern as well. Oh, great, we've had a good year, we can invest in it, or we've not.
We can buy a new receiver,
or a new hammer.
That's right, okay.
And so, but it's almost sort of become ingrained, if you like. It's like, if you don't need to change something, don't strive to change it just for the sake of it. Oh yeah, there's a bigger hammer out there. Well, that's all right. That one you've got works. So everybody's now like, that's my hammer. I'm not going to change my hammer. Why should it? And it's only when the hammer's eventually completely useless that you'll look to find another one.
I had fun looking at the hammers today, because sometimes the malt gets stuck, and it needs a bit of encouragement to continue to flow. And one of the things that they can do is get their sticks in there and things like that and get it moving. But obviously sometimes they're going to be banging this vessel with a hammer, and it's covered in little kind of marks, hammer marks. And then you look at the hammers, and what you've said is absolutely, somebody has a hammer, and it's their hammer. And some of these hammers look like somebody's taken a log and put a shaft in it. That's their hammer to get the malt moving again. And it's that kind of thing that, again, whether does that manifest in the flavour that's in the glass or whatever? Maybe, maybe not, but it doesn't matter, because it makes it much more of a story about people. Whiskey's a product for people, made by people. And I think that show me the opposite of this or something. I don't know. We can sit down and discuss it forever. But I think you taste it. I think you taste it in this whiskey.
It's reflective of a mindset as much as it is on how it imparts the flavour. The other parts of the process that we never change impact all the flavour. But the mindset is don't change anything, because one wee change somewhere might make a wee change further down the line.
There's a belligerence in it. There's a stubbornness in it.
Absolutely.
There's a kind of feeling of, no, that's the way we do it. And that's the way that we'll continue to do it. My friend here, Bill, from the States, is with me, and he's in production, he's in manufacturing as well, but he's in electronics and things. And he's looking at all these stages, and he's saying, do you know what, see if they could do this with that, or if they could cut that, or if they do that, if they could spread that. His mind is thinking about all these ways to make it easier. But obviously what he's got to then consider is go, oh, wait a minute, I'm in Springbank. What he's actually doing is talking about ways to change the thing. And there must be a time that you go through to, if you start working here, to kind of let that mindset go a little bit and realize that you're here to preserve what you've inherited for the next generation, rather than modify or forever change it. Would that be?
It seems to work as it is.
Yeah.
So you'd be mad to want to do it any differently. I think, and you're right, it is very much the job of the current people, whatever role you're in within the company. It's when you eventually leave that role that you leave it more or less as you found it, or at least to the same standard.
Our only job is to leave it better for the next generation.
Because it's been here for nearly 200 years, so we're all playing our part in the next step in that direction.
Absolutely. Adrian Madrigal, good to see you. And Adrian, he's saying vPub Deluxe Edition, and he's put me a wee dram as well. Thank you very much, buddy. Very generous. And my pal from Canada, Graham Young, is in as well with a wee dram, saying two of the best days of my adult life have been spent in the Wonderland at Springbank and Kilkerran Distilleries.
Fantastic.
Barley to bottle next time. Yeah, I absolutely heartily recommend it as well, Graham, and I hope you're able to achieve that. To just dwell on your title for a second, Ranald, okay, we started up, David Allen he's sales for Kilkerran, for Springbank. Then we moved on to Finlay's coming in, he's production director, which takes him into the Cadenheads realm a little bit. But you have oversight for J&A Mitchell brands.
Yeah.
So we're talking Springbank, we're talking Glengyle, all the brands that entails, and also Cadenheads as well.
Yeah.
I have a huge community in Europe, a lot of people supporting me in Europe that loved Cadenheads, that had the privilege of being able to connect with Cadenheads in a way that was pretty special for them. Mm-hmm. And what happened last year, I think it was last year, or was it earlier this year? Yeah. I don't even remember now, the time's gone by. But I got a lot of feedback to say this has suddenly changed on a dime. You had a hard time with that as well.
We did.
Yeah. Is this the right platform to talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
I've discovered more about that this week than I was aware of before. Mm-hmm. So when we have the access to have it from the horse's mouth, I think we have to do it.
Yeah.
Because I was one of the voices on social media relaying the frustrations, my own frustration as well, about suddenly how that came to change. Mm-hmm. And then I hear the difficulties that you guys had. So I think it'd be worthwhile asking what happened.
Aye. Well, the setup in Europe was one that had been established in probably the mid to late 90s initially. And at that time, the whisky landscape was incredibly different to what it is today. And we effectively, over time, ended up with 6 or 7 different individual business relationships with each of these different Cadenhead shops.
These would have been independent retailers with Cadenhead's branding.
Yeah. So every shop was a franchise, effectively. And well, fundamentally things change. You know, we had a great relationship with the majority of these shops right up until the day that the relationship was brought to an end, which incidentally wasn't a year ago. It was on the 31st of July this year. So
because of the time,
the shops were given a fair amount of notice. Now they weren't being supplied with stock at the same rates as they had been, but there are individual reasons for how we dealt with each business, if I can put it that way. That it's probably not fair to talk about each different shop and each different individual.
We're not
but our main concern, and it remains our main concern, isn't necessarily each of those individual shops. It's the people who bought from those shops, because and I presume they are the people who are in your community. And they're probably a lot of them members or were members of the Cadenhead Club and were our most loyal customers. And we are still and getting closer to a solution where we can actually supply them with their cask strength, single cask, authentic collection whiskies again.
Despite challenges like the pressure. Okay, we can talk about the recent announcement from Gordon MacPhail about their business, significant business change for the future. We're not going to see that manifest immediately, but we're going to see changes quite quickly. And in the future, they're making clear statements. So you're obviously got the same challenges, because these are, when it's talking about Cadenheads, it's not releases from Springbank and Kilkerran. This is Cadenhead's business, independent bottling business. There are huge challenges here can we talk about, did Brexit have anything to do with it?
Brexit had an impact on the cost of doing business, if we can put it that way. It's a very boring phrase, but it became more expensive to send whiskey under the distribution model that we had to these European markets, because effectively that's what each shop has to be seen as from a business perspective. They were retailers and distributors. From the Springbank side of things, we have a network of distributors around the world who we give an allocation to, we ship it to them, and then they distribute it onward to the retail chain. So with the Cadenhead setup, we were effectively bypassing distributors, going straight to retailers, but they were fulfilling the same role effectively. And Brexit had an impact on the cost of shipping, the time shipping took. By far the biggest impact, though, was availability of whiskey. Because like every other independent bottler, Gordon MacPhail or whoever, the challenges of supply aren't getting any easier to solve. Now, we've taken
exactly what the theme of tonight actually is.
Yeah. We've taken a slightly different approach, though, in that rather than effectively announcing the early stages of a complete withdrawal from that business, we're trying to take steps to protect the future of that business from our perspective, because Cadenheads is, give or take, a third of the J&A Mitchell Group's business.
Wow.
So it's a significant part of what we do. And so it's a very rough equation. But if we've got 100 staff and a third of our business is Cadenheads, then a third of those jobs rely on Cadenheads. Yes. So we have to take the steps to protect those 33 plus jobs here in Campbelltown, and then try and find the solution that suits our people in Europe.
The theme is the same. What you're talking about is sustainability.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is preserving it for the next generation.
Yeah.
You're not going to make an announcement, I imagine, that you're going to discontinue your independent bottling program.
No, we're far from
and focusing on distilling, because you've been distilling for actually longer than you've been independent bottling.
Yeah, right, absolutely.
And you're going to maintain both avenues going forward.
Yeah. So the challenge for us is to find the correct way of getting the whiskies that our Cadenhead drinkers in Europe want. So I can't talk specifically about why we won't supply Cadenhead's Cologne or why we won't supply Cadenhead's Vienna or wherever, because each one has got a different set of circumstances.
Because it was an individual
individual business.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah,
and the model as a whole just didn't work. It wasn't financially viable. We were not. We couldn't sustain the business running it that way. It's probably.
I think what I'm hearing is you were not making money.
We were not doing enough to sustain the jobs we needed to sustain for the foreseeable future. So we've changed the model, and we're working on a way of trying to get these bottles straight to the consumer. Now, at the moment, if a customer in Germany wants to buy from the Cadenhead's website, they can, but the shipping costs, which are not our doing, they're costs imposed on us, are horrendous. There's a duty payment due when the bottle arrives in Germany, and it's probably pricing a lot of people out of the market at the moment. So we're working on a solution, and we're pretty close to it, where we can get whiskey delivered direct to these people's doors much more quickly and at a much more cost-effective way, because really, without being too brutal about it, our loyalty is to these guys. It's not to the people who are in the middle who got whiskey to them. We had business relationships with them over a number of years. They actually came to an amicable conclusion in most cases. But I completely understand that the Cadenhead's drinker who was buying from Berlin, Cologne, Odense.
Well, they're going to have a discussion over a countertop, and actually each of these European cities where this was happening, and they would have come away with believing that was the case.
Yeah.
So, and I know that a lot of us, we don't perhaps invest, and I'll include myself in this, the time to call up you guys and say, oh, well, what's the actual story there, or things like that. And we do comment freely, and it's one of the privileges that we have in a community that we all live in, and I will work very hard to preserve that.
Yeah.
The only way that we can actually work out what's happening, what the longer term plan is that when we have candor, openness, and access, like you're. So for me, for you to say, I don't care what you ask me, Roy, and you just to sit and take that a question like that is very much appreciated.
Yeah,
they're not going to get any easier.
No, well, well. We've still not even talked about the society member numbers yet.
Yes, I know, we didn't get to it. So is there a chance of we joining the society anytime soon?
No, is the short answer to that. We are having constant conversations about what can we do with that, because, again, call it candor if you will, but I don't know, 3,000 members, something like that in the society, maybe 2,500 active members. Not all of those guys are members of the society for reasons we'd like them to be members. So there's guys just buying bottles to flip. There's people who are members because they think they can make a buck off us. They're not members because they love the product for itself, or they love the company, or they've been drinking the whiskey for a long time and want to show their support. So we want to find a way to separate,
to define those
effectively.
Okay.
Lose those people from the privileged position they're in. So just opening the doors to let more people join
isn't going to fix
you're just going to have the same problem, but on a grander scale, which again, with that short-term thinking that some people may apply, great, we can make fortunes off of that, but that's not what it's about. I'd rather see a society of 100 people who cared enough to really want to be in it than a society of 10,000 people who could make us £1 million or whatever. And so the challenge is identifying the right people and getting them in the door, and how we then make the society fit their needs. So we're already doing things, you know, we're traveling not just around the UK, we're getting around Europe, having society tastings, you know, small charge to come along, or free in some cases, turn up, have a dram, chat to us. And we're not necessarily taking names and going, oh, I turned up for a tasting, you're good. Oh, I didn't turn up for a tasting in your city, you're bad. But we're talking to people, and we're monitoring it, and we're looking at how we...
all of these things seem to be manifest. It's from success. You're dealing with challenges that's brought about by success and a limited amount of product. You don't have the product to anyway close to sate the market demand for it. And that's what's affecting the Whisky School. That's what's affecting the Springbank Society. So sorry, Helen, you and I will both have to wait and see what these guys have got and plan for the future in order to see if you can get anywhere closer to it.
There will be something. There will be something. We're looking at ways, be it recommendations from people we know, or be it some form of loyalty or something.
Well, it's incumbent upon me, my responsibility too. Why am I only interested in getting to joining the Springbank Society after it's closed? Well, it's because I didn't care. I didn't feel like there was a risk or a threat to me getting Springbank product like I do today. I didn't feel that there was a need to do so. I supported your product. I purchased your product. I don't really join loyalty schemes or these kind of things. It's a very considered thing for me. But now I do kind of look at it and say, because I would have been one of the people who's opening it and sharing it and enjoying it and being, for me, whiskey is very much about, the reminder of what it is to be alive, to be mortal, and you can't enjoy it when you're dead. And Absolutely. It's a shame that these things, these dynamics, these challenges are happening through success, but it continues.
It's like all the other problems we face with not enough stock, not enough space in the warehouse, not enough malting capacity, whatever, we will fix it. It just takes us a wee while to work through it.
Petehead is saying there are 230 that gave this a like up. Seems like a decent amount. Thank you, Frank. You're always good at looking after the thumbs. Thank you very much. Not just a thumbs up for me coming to you tonight in a regular vPub, but for the guys who staying way past their regular business working hours to take any questions that we're willing to throw at them as well. That has to be appreciated. And if you can do that with the likes, that would be fantastic. Tony Nelson is suggesting, put in a good word for me to be the Springbank ambassador for Washington, D.C. area, James DeGiulio for Northeast, and Jimmy Legg for the Northeast East. Yeah, there's plenty of them out there. I wonder if they would do a good job for you, if they would just be enjoying drinking the fruits of your labours.
I don't know if they want to join the no, you can't have any of this club, then it's not as easy as it sounds.
Thank you, Helen, as well. Thanks so much. Hey guys, Whisky areas here, Aquaviti and Ranald. What Ben says, Whisky with Wally. One, Aquaviti, look at the Thompson Brothers model. Need to take photos of open bottles to get points to get bottles. I think it's always challenging, and I think it is. There is what you want to do is come up with schemes that's not seen to be excluding or selective. You need to try and find fair schemes, and that's a big challenge for everyone.
Yeah, and there's challenges of scale as well, compared to, if everyone who opens a bottle of Springbank 10 wants to send a picture, that's 70,000+ pictures we're getting a year.
Yeah, I mean, Springbank is
12 and the 15.
Springbank is a tiny distillery, but that is, it's a very difficult thing. We've got to talk about every scheme you come up with needs administration. It needs somebody to police it and things like that as well. Fantastic. Listen, but there was also some pretty significant news recently as well. Mr. Wright passed. Yeah, it was Mr. Wright was a good age. I think he was 92 years old when he passed as well. There's a lot of people looking at that and seeing, there's a kind of distant perception from people like me that look at the culture and the things that go on at Springbank and wonder how much of that came from the character that he was. Mm-hmm. And extrapolate from that, how is that going to potentially affect the direction that potentially this loved company is potentially going to go in? Yeah. Can you make a comment on that?
Absolutely. I mean, it's probably fairest to say that Mr. Wright, over his 60+ years as major shareholder and then chairman of the company, set the standard that we all work to. But in his latter years, probably the last 10, 15 years, he was much more of an overseer. So he had put in place a board of directors, a management team, if you like, that he had confidence in to run the company the way he wanted it to be run.
Sure, yeah.
And it, has gone from strength to strength in that time. And it becomes the job of those people to identify the next generation who they feel will continue to run the distillery the way it should be, the company the way it should be. So although he wasn't directly involved on a daily basis every day, every week for 10, 15 years, he was still very much the figurehead and the overseer and could kind of yay or nay anything.
Sure.
He was not a massively controlling influence, if you like. It wasn't, you must do this because I said that, and you must do this. He'd almost kind of set the standard, set the environment for other people to come in and develop the business and grow it. So that's very much the path that we want to continue down. And I think the evidence of the last few years, where we've not bowed to pressure on stocks to go down let's bottle it as young as we can get away with and charge as much as we can, or let's automate a bit to save here. That kind of evidence, I think, shows that we're in fairly good hands for the future. And it's on each generation, as we've mentioned, to identify the next generation that will continue it like that. And so it's very much as you were. Yeah. It's extremely sad that we've lost Mr. Wright, the figurehead since, I think he was chairman from 1960.
Yeah.
So that's an
incredible tenure, right?
The things Mr. Wright must have seen in terms of booms and busts in the whiskey industry were incredible. Yeah. And he's the one who sets that standard of, during his tenure in the 80s, Springbank didn't distill a lot. The business was probably, fair to say, clinging on by the skin of its teeth almost, it's digging its fingernails in, and then it began to thrive and develop as time went on. And he said, he was very clear, we never want to go back to those days. So when times are good, as they are, we might not have enough whiskey, but, we have enough whiskey to employ the people we do. So if things change, and I keep hearing that the bubble's going to burst and stuff, but,
sure.
It won't it? But if the bubble bursts and demand for whiskey,
there's a resilience
we
around
can still sell what
model,
we have,
yes,
and protect the jobs we have. And that's his lasting legacy.
Yeah.
It's don't bend with the wind,
don't
bow
kowtow
to pressure.
To the immediate.
Yeah. Do it our way and keep doing it that way. And
Yeah.
I think he's probably identified some more people who are very much of that mindset. So
what we're talking about is a defined culture, a philosophy, a way of thinking, a way of working, a way of going out to market that is not easy to find these days. It has to be built on a legacy or somebody with a somewhat different way of looking at things. And not only do people see it, not only do people taste it, but I think they feel it too.
Good.
I'm reassured by everything I've seen this week that it is very much business as usual. It's incredible, the consistency right across the entire organisation, regardless of who you interact with. Tony Nelson has bought me a generous dram to say great vPub, an excuse to sample my barley to bottle blend, much better than Gregor's. And Demi Johns from summer 2022 visit. Tony, I'm glad you were able to come here and pick up souvenirs, and you're able to sit back there in the US and enjoy them, my friend, and it's nice to welcome you in here. Martin Fielder is saying, what a great show, want to watch again on replay. Thank you, Martin. Thank you for being here tonight and all the times that you're in here, buddy. It's great to have you. And Graham Fraser is saying, respect to Headley for resolving the future of Springbank as he approached old age. That idea, that concept of making sure that you leave something for the next generation, can it be understated?
No.
It's not easily overstated, I have to say. Whisky Ian is saying, further proof that Springbank's strength can be found in its people. What a really cool sentiment. Let's lighten the mood a little bit. Let's move on to something a bit fun. We're getting on to midnight. We're getting on to the quiz at the end. So the last question of the night is, local barley's far too expensive. Come on, Ronald. It costs a fortune.
No, it's not.
Even if I can buy it, I can't.
No,
Why is local barley so expensive?
No,
it's a 10-year-old product at 90 quid, 100 quid, 120 quid.
Yeah.
So expensive.
It's twofold.
Springbank 10 is 52 to 54 quid.
Yeah.
What's the story?
Well, it's the local barley is 25 to 30% lower yielding for a start. So if we get 400 litres of alcohol per tonne out of our northeast barley, if we get 320, we're out of the local barley, we've had a great harvest. So already you're getting less for your money.
Can I demonstrate that I've been at the whiskey school for a week? Can I answer this question?
Absolutely.
Would you indulge
Go
me?
for it.
The people here are fantastic, right? They're candid and they're happy just to tell you how it is. It's fantastic. It's disarming. It's endearing. It's exactly what you want. Without exception, I don't care what part of the process you're involved in here, local barley is a pain in the arse. It's a pain in the arse from the moment the barley is delivered until the thing's getting put in a bottle. And perhaps potentially even when the thing goes out there in the market, because the secondary market problems that they're having. A 20-ton delivery of barley is suddenly shrunk down to 15 or 16 tons, just because of the way that local barley is provided rather than from a traditional barley source. The grains are infinitely difficult, much more difficult to handle than regular barley grains because they're smaller and they don't behave in the same way. Every single point in the process is infinitely more inefficient, awkward, difficult, stubborn than anything else that you do. And at every point in the process, it's all got to be kept separate and managed as a completely separate thing to the point that you even handle it on a different floor.
Correct.
When you go around here and you see the efforts that they go to in order to preserve this annual release of local barley and then talk to the staff about how much they don't like long row. Long row is a bit of a pain, but they do it. They're okay with Springbank. They love Hazelburn. It's easier. Local barley is a swear word here.
Yeah.
And yet you keep doing it.
Yeah. They'll be delighted to hear that we plan to do more of it as well.
You're continuing it going.
Yeah.
It feels like, and I'm not just talking glibly about the secondary market for local barley. I'm talking about from a production, from hands-on perspective. It actually feels like it's too cheap. I cannot believe that a business would continue to do such a project when I've heard how painful it is for everyone involved.
It's interesting to sit and listen to how you describe it, and you talk about it, the working with it being difficult, complicated, stubborn, hard work and stuff.
Yeah.
In that way alone, it's Springbank.
Yeah.
Because we're difficult and stubborn and hard to work with, and we do it our own way, and it's not easy. So in many ways, it's the ideal reflection. Never mind the fact that a local farmer is getting the money for that barley rather than a farmer up in the northeast or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's very reflective of the place it comes from, the people who make it, how it's made. And for that reason alone, it's worth more. I could also make a strong argument that Springbank 10 at 50 quid is worth more than it is as well, but I won't because that's for other people to decide. But whiskey's too cheap in general anyway.
Can people come and enjoy a local barley when they come to the Washback Bar?
They can come and enjoy about 6, I think, that we've got in flight at the moment.
I'm only going to ask you for one.
Yeah, absolutely. if David tells me where he's in it.
No, I'm only kidding. It's very, very tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah, it's right underneath your feet, right? Look, you've been sitting above it all night.
Oh my goodness, if I'd known. May I?
Yeah, absolutely.
I won't
Do
even...
that. Take a lucky dip.
Just take a lucky
Just
dip.
take a lucky dip. The one at the front's a 16-year-old, if you want.
I had... this is my first ever experience of local barley, 54.3 16-year-old. So this is 2017, 2018, 2019? No,
2016, I think, was
Sorry?
it the bottle of that one? 2016,
2016.
January 2016.
Wow. Yes, and every Glasgow Whisky Festival, after I tasted this, there was a kind of like, just please let them have a local barley on or under the table. Let them have another one. So much like you talk about the philosophy, the stubborn, the culture, the kind of idea that you're just going to go ahead and do it in this almost belligerent way, it's proved to be a functional, proficient way to make compelling things that is not typical. It's easy to say the words craft and artisanal and all of these things. You don't use that language.
No.
You
It's 'cause it's
say,
lost meaning.
you use, this is our way. This is the Campbellton way. This is the Springbank way. And everything that you're doing is, can we sustain? Can we look after our local community? Can we look after our customers? Because once upon a time, they were the ones in the know, and when nobody else knew.
Absolutely.
And every decision that you make is focused on those things. I appreciate that the communication is difficult these days. We live in the online era. But when you have, I'll say it for the third time tonight, an openness like this, a willingness to step forward, and even the tongue-in-cheek questions I've given you tonight were bloody difficult. And I appreciate that. I'll let you pour this. I don't want to just take it. Listen, everybody, if you're willing to stay to the end, there's a very, very cool, fun Springbank themed quiz that I hope can challenge the team here, can challenge you at home. It might even demonstrate to the team here that how knowledgeable everyone is at home about the Springbank product, as if they didn't know already. And it's going to kind of weave in and hopefully pull in some inspiration from the whiskey school that I've had this week as well. If you're up for it, that would be amazing if you stayed till the quiz at the end. We're going to get organised here for a second. You'll have to sit through this wee video vignette while we do that. And I'll raise a glass to say, Ranald, sincerely, thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Cheers,
all.
Ray. Thank you. Cheers, folks.
Amazing. I'll see you in a second. We're just about getting things together. Apparently everyone wants a wee drop of the local barley now if they're going to be bullied into participating in the quiz. Listen, there's lots of things that I could have talked about tonight that I want to give my own take on, my own opinion on. There's lots more that I can talk about. Do you have I'll take the mic off you now.
That's probably a good idea for all concerned.
Apologies for the sound that you're hearing right now. And probably what can happen is that, in fact, if you just take it down there, and put it on the, and we might be able to hear some of the feedback from you. Just leave it on there. Just clip it onto something, and hopefully the sound will be okay. Something, the softer the thing is, the better it would be. Anyway, the team are going to participate in this quiz at the end. But what I'm going to do over the course of the next few weeks, because I'm delinquent on things like the patron-only lock-ins and things like that, is catch up on those, and through those, and through future vPubs, and every bit of information that I share with you about Springbank and beyond, honestly, is going to be very much influenced by the things that I've been able to learn over the week that I've spent in Campbelltown. It's been fantastic. It's been fantastic to feel the belief, the self-belief, almost the kind of vindication, the sense of vindication that after decades of doing something, not because it was easy, but because it was difficult, is actually bearing fruit is palpable. You recognise it everywhere. But also just the glee and the delight, the people being happy to welcome visitors to Campbelltown, to see their town busy and active, to see people literally walking up to them and saying, how does it feel to live in the town that makes the best whiskey in the planet? It's incredible to witness this type of thing happening. Listen, there are real Springbank fans out there, but there are people that are yet to be Springbank fans. If you're going to make a pilgrimage to Scotland, consider making that extra effort to come down the peninsula and see what's happening here at Glengyle, at Glen-Scotia up the road. It's something that everybody needs to taste, I think. And it doesn't always need to be a local barley, but if it can be, it's just sweetens the deal. Anyway, enough for this. Let's get the quiz on the go. Let's try and bring in the team here. Actually, I'm going to bring this in. Guys, if you're up for it, well, you've not said no to anything so far, even when asked for a local barley. So, okay, let's bring the team in. Let's bring it alongside. Let's bring it so that we can see them a wee bit better. Let's listen. Good luck, everybody. As the S on the quiz tells you, you don't see it. You can't see it, can you? Do you have any way to monitor this? Okay.
Got a phone here.
You've got a phone, so you're just about able to do it, right? Okay. So we'll see who we've got here. From left to, so Ranald is just about going to be able to squeeze in there. Obviously, we've got Finlay next, then we've got David Allen, then we've got Andrew.
Can you move the camera a wee bit?
I can absolutely move the camera a wee bit. That's a lot easier than moving bodies, isn't it? There you go, Andrew. You can help me out next time as well. Thank you.
We're all pretty snug here.
And on the end, we've got David Wood, the bar manager, here as well, who's been a terrific support. But I've missed somebody in there in the centre, and he's been my boss. He's been my gaffer for the week. We have my friend Marcus. Marcus is over. He lives in Scotland, but he's a Danish guy. He's studying at Heriot University, doing his IBD. He's BSc in brewing and distilling up there, and he's been working at Springbank the last few weeks. And he's been a shepherd for us. He's been a guidance, a light, an inspiration, and a pal. So it's a pleasure to have you participating in the quiz tonight. I predict that you might score a 10 out of 10, and we'll share why a wee bit later for that. Good luck, everybody. Just copy Marcus. You need to be the last one to raise that card, okay? Good luck, everybody. Of course, it's Springbank themed, and I hope that it's also in keeping with the traditional kind of questions that you would come to expect from the vPub. Pedro is saying I won't be able to stay for the quiz today. He's already afraid. Don't be afraid. It's hopefully something that you can do, but I know you'll pick it up in the replay, Pedro. Thank you very much for joining from Brazil. He's saying thanks for another amazing vPub. Please share a big thank you to the Springbank team from Brazil. Cheers. Thank you, Pedro. They hear you loud and clear. My pal Bill Dull, one of my fellow students and my pal of the last 3 or 4 decades, he's suffered me for a long time, is still tuning in despite him being absolutely exhausted. He's saying, I'll be down for my local barley in 2 minutes. We better hurry up, buddy, because it's going down a treat. And Ross Mashburn, I understand much more of why the local barley is special. Thanks, Rocky. Thanks, Ross, and thanks for your recent time in Glasgow as well. I love spending time with you and Jill, buddy. I'll see you soon. Peter Lee is saying, please tell me what that local barley 16-year-old is like, as I've never tried it. Peter, it's not bad. If I can squirrel you a wee sample, I'll do my very best. Okay, everybody, you ready? You've got your cards. You can see everybody's got their typical vPub A, B, C, D cards printed out more professionally than they've ever been done ever before. I'm going to steal these and use them for vPubs in the future, thanks to David at the end. Good luck, everyone. Question 1. I'm going to look at a wee image here. Let you take it in for a second, and then ask you the question. The colour of the pillars and the Springbank malt floors are what? We won't be going back to that picture again. Are they A, red and purple? Are they B, purple and gold? Or are they C, mixed? They are the colours of Springbank core expressions. Typically, the vPub quiz at the end starts off with easy questions and then progressively get a wee bit tricky as time goes on. I hope we follow that pattern tonight, because I think this is For the team especially, a fairly easy one. And for anybody tuning in from home, I hope you had a chance to study the pillars in that last image before I switched over. Renato's bought us a wee dram. He's saying hi from Brazil. We love you here, regards. I'm sure you're talking about the team at Springbank. Renato, thank you very much for the generous dram. And thanks for tuning in tonight. I hope you can stay for the quiz at the end. Okay, everyone, we'll go over to you. The crowd is coming in. They seem absolutely convinced in a very specific answer. I don't know if you can see that or not. But if you hold up your cards in 3, 2, 1, we have unanimously, they seem to think that it's C, and I can tell you that absolutely they're spot on. And if we go back to that image again, you can see there that on the right-hand side, all the colours, which is a theme here. They tend to do the accommodation by colour, the T-shirts by colour, the Whisky School by colour and everything, just celebrating that kind of quite vivid branding that they have, and it's been a theme of this week. So C, if you got C, absolutely right. Team are on 100% so far. Question 2. Woven into many of the Springbank and Campbelltown visitor experiences is Cadden Heads, an independent bottler, but founded where and when? When was Cadden Heads founded and where? A, Aberdeen in 1842, Aberdeen in 1895, and Campbelltown in 1842. For the people at home saying, oh, Roy, I thought you said these were going to be easy questions. Let's pause for a second and look at the potential answers. You can work it out, hopefully, quite quickly. Is it A, Aberdeen in 1842? Is it B, Aberdeen in 1895? Is it C, Campbelltown in 1842? Cadden Heads, they're doing fantastic things here in town. In Campbelltown, I've been round and managed to get my backside and a comfy sofa round at their tasting room. Hopefully going to get a chance to go round there tomorrow for a wee breather as well. But you can see the investment coming into the town, the whisky tasting experiences. I don't know if they're laughing because they're disagreeing with each other. Or
no, it's you get 5 out of 10 and you're fired. So.
Well, 5 out of 10 is normally a pass mark. But okay, 5 out of 10. There's jobs on the line here. Okay, you guys go ahead then. Show us what you're bringing up here. Oh, everybody thinks that it's Aberdeen and 1842, and of course. It is absolutely Aberdeen 1842. Still the oldest independent bottler in existence and current operation, correct?
Correct. Scotland's oldest independent bottler.
And still going strong.
Very much so.
Question 3. Which of these has never been released as a triple distilled expression? These are too easy for you. Hopefully I've thrown in a couple of banana skins in the future. Okay, which has never been released as a core triple distilled expression? A, Kilkerran, B, Hazelburn, or C, Longrow? So there's 3 brands from Springbank. One is partially triple distilled, one is triple distilled, and one is double distilled. And then, of course, we have things happening up there at Glengyle Distillery as well. But I'm asking you what has never been released as a triple distilled expression. Not to my knowledge.
Finley's looking for the D card.
Is there potentially been a triple distilled?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, just teasing Andrew.
Just teasing.
I'm sweating here.
Okay, on
He's not got
3.
a job tomorrow.
Hanging by a thread.
You're only just in the door. 3, 2, 1. Easy. Come on, we need to see some different things there. Okay, absolutely. C, double distilled Longrow. People are quite happy about the distillation side of Longrow, but the malt here, because of the way it's handled and malted and because of the way it's peated, it's back-breaking to put Longrow together. Think about that the next time you pick up a bottle of Longrow peated deliciousness for less than 50 quid and the amount of effort that's put into making that product. I hope you have the privilege one day of coming here and seeing it happen. It's quite incredible. Question 4. In terms of original founding year, which of these distilleries is the youngest? A, Glen Scotia, B, Glengyle, or C, Springbank? Please, team, no conferring on this one. Which of these is the youngest? Glen Scotia, Glengyle, Springbank. Which of these is the youngest? Oh, no conferring? You're on camera, you'll get busted. Ranald is looking, he's copying from somewhere.
I was trying to get the order. I was trying to get my A, B's, and C's.
Fantastic. Okay, after 3, 2, 1. We have broken. Somebody slid up in terms of original founding year. Give me that microphone back.
This is a family show.
Yeah. I can tell you that, unfortunately, Andrew, 1872 for Glengyle, 1828 for Springbank, unfortunately. Yeah.
He said copy Marcus.
He's feeling it down there. I can see he's feeling it, but that's there's time yet. There's time yet. Okay, another easy one for the team, but a tricky one for you guys back home. This is one I did for the Whisky School. I'm going to show you an image here. Question 5 is always an image, but it's a different one. We're looking at clearly a big pile of barley, but there's a mark in the barley. I'll help you decipher the mark. I want to know what type of instrument left this imprint. Here's what the imprint actually looks like for those of you on wee phone screens and things like that. What has left that imprint in the barley? What is it called? Is it called A, a turner, B, a grubber, or C, a scarifier? Perhaps I'm talking about specifically what it's called here at Springbank, but I had never used such an implement until this week. Peter Lee, the local barley that I'm sipping, is absolutely gorgeous. How can something of this ABV be elegant? But it is. Okay, do we have confidence here? Do we have chuckling, a bit of conferring going on?
Some people are leaving their answers face up.
I know.
Some people are just starting to get a wee bit more guarded. Okay, this has got to be serious here, right? There's egg on faces for people who don't. Okay, 3, 2, 1. A turner, a grubber, or a... Okay, we have absolute consensus here that we're looking at a grubber. And indeed, as the whole entire team on the school this week worked out, we've been using the grubber this week. It's a grubber. I do have a picture of a grubber. I was going to put it in, but I didn't. You just have to imagine something that would leave that imprint. Question 6. Dramface reviewed 2023's Kilkerran 16-year-old today, which is made up of 60% ex-sherry, 35% ex-bourbon, and 5% what? You can thank me for this later, Finlay. What is the 5% in the latest 2023 Kilkerran release? The first time it's ever appeared. Is it A, ex-Marsala, B, ex-rum, or C, ex-Madeira? What cask has been used for the 5% in this year's pretty delicious Kilkerran 16-year-old?
For 2 days.
By the way, I worked out in my blending session that if you're blending Springbanks together, it pretty much doesn't matter what order you put them in. They turn out fantastic. That's been very dismissive of the work they do here, but we've got to make the fantastic thing in the first place. Okay, what do we have? What is the Kilkerran 2023 5%? 3, 2, 1. Everybody thinks that it's ex-rum, and they're absolutely all right. How about our crowd? Such a knowledgeable crowd, despite the fact that it's only been out just a couple or 3 weeks. So many of you can know immediately that it's ex-rum. Well done, everybody. 6 out of 6 for Philip Wagner, fantastic. 6 so far also for BMO. Too Slow on a 6. Who else is on a 6? Graham Young on a 6. Ian Sunderland on a 6. Hell's Wind.
Should have been up the road.
Had a date tonight.
I'm going to do my best. I'm going to do my best to help you out, Andrew, but it might be. Fantastic. Okay, let's go. Let's move on. Confirm that that's ex-rum. Move on to question 7. 7, 8, 9, and 10. 4 more to go. We'll get a wee bit crunchier from here on in. Visiting, you'll find yourself welcomed at the Washback Bar, which is literally a repurposed washback. It's a fermentation vessel. but from where? Where is it from? Based on the Kilkerran official website, is it A, Glengyle, B, both Glengyle and Springbank, or C, elsewhere? I'm sitting in a repurposed washback tonight, and I'm just asking the team, where is that from? A, Glengyle, Kilkerran, B, both Glengyle and Springbank, or C, elsewhere? It is causing a wee bit of discussion there. We might get a bit of a contrast here.
You stumped me again.
Andrew's the newest in. He's the newest on the door. How long have you been working here?
Total about a week. But I worked for a good company before called
How long have
Cadheads.
you been at Cadheads?
About a year before that.
Okay, so the excuses are starting to run out. Come on, let's see. Where is it from? Is it A, Glengyle, B, Springbank and Glengyle, or C, elsewhere? 3, 2, 1. Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. Some think Glengyle, some think both. Nobody thinks elsewhere. Now I'm going to keep this up. I need to see a reaction. I can tell you that it's Springbank and Glengyle. Yes, so it's using timber from
We're going to have to change history. Watch history about to be changed.
We've got documented evidence of these sales guys having a facts wrong. So we'll not accept the answer to this one.
And it's here for posterity. This is going to be difficult.
More training.
Okay, question 8. Wee bit of a banana skin potentially. All of you are going to need to focus. I detect that this will have a few of you slipping up. In the 2022 Online Scotch Whisky Awards, how many nominations were received by J&A Mitchell products? I've typed how many twice. That's not a clue. How many nominations did you receive in 2022? Was it A, 1 nomination, B, 4 nominations, C, 6 nominations? So there are 9 categories in the Online Scotch Whisky Awards. J&A Mitchell don't qualify for some, such as Best World Whisky, etc. But they have products that qualify for a lot of the categories. How did they do in the nomination stake? The nomination show for the Online Scotch Whisky Awards is coming up on Saturday, the 23rd of November. Mark it in your diary. More to follow on that. Okay, let's go over to the team. How many nominations did you get last year, guys? You've been talking about how important these awards are to you. It's great to hear. But how many products made it in? Was it 1, 4, or 6? 3, 2, 1. Wow. Wow. Andrew, I'm so sorry, buddy.
I'm actually going to get fired.
But it was, no, I don't think so, because he was being an optimist. He was like, surely we've got 6. Surely we get 6 nominations. I can tell you that they received a nomination for the Best Value in the Kilkerran 12, Best Blended Malt for the Campbelltown Loch, Best Distillery, of course, which they went on to win, and the Best Scotch Whisky, which was last year's 2022 Kilkerran 16-year-old. Quite an amazing performance. Really, really a testament to everything that's been done down here. Question 9. Springbank stopped selling casks when? You're nervous, but this is easy. Was it the 1980s, the 1990s, or the 2000s?
Given us a decade.
See? I can't tell you how I could feel the silence, the tension that suddenly entered the room. I was like, oh my goodness, it's going to be a year. Yeah, but no, I gave a decade. It's got to be something that can be participated in by those at home. How Best Distillery is a product nomination. Okay, Nikolai, you're absolutely right. But a distillery is a product of something. It's certainly in the lack of knowing another thing to way to phrase it. It stands. Terrific stuff. This is going to be easy for you all. So there's only the ass hat after this. So I'll ask you for your scores in a second. When did Springbank stop selling casks? David, tell us.
2001 specifically.
2001. 2001. I just want to draw attention to my friend Marcus here, who has been a font of knowledge the entire time. I wonder, he deserves a job, does he not?
Andrew's is coming up.
He's moving to Paisley.
Andrew's job is there. Fantastic. Absolutely. 2001, they stopped selling casks. One of these measures of control that they took way back in 2001. Quite incredible to think about that. Okay, before we approach the ass hat at the end, let's work out if are any of you on 9 out of 9? How many? 3, 1, 2. Only 2 of you.
2 are disputed though.
Oh, 2 are disputed. Okay. We can talk about that long into the
History
evening.
rewritten.
But let it be known that to almost 300 of you joining live, that there's only 2 still in the game for a perfect score tonight. Brilliant. That means that it's a typical vPub quiz at the end. Good stuff. It's not going to get any easier for you. The ass hat question at the end is always meant to be deliberately obtuse, awkward, and difficult. Here it is. Here's the ass hat question for tonight. How many currently operational distilleries exist in Speyside? About the same as A, number of litres in a quarter cask. B, number of kilometres from Glasgow to Campbelltown. Or C, the combined age of all the official core releases from Springbank and Kilkerran. So if it's a non-age statement product, such as the Longbow, that's a 0. But if it's a 10, that's 10 years. 12 cask strength, it's 12 years, and so on, up to 18 years old, because beyond that, it's not a core release. I hope that I would get consensus with that. So if you add up the core ranges from Glengyle and Springbank, that's what I'm looking for C. So, how many distilleries are there in Speyside? About the same as litres in a quarter cask, about the same as kilometres from Glasgow to Campbelltown, or the combined age statements of all the core releases from Glengyle and Springbank. I am not doing the math, says Rolfie Ebhead over in Norway. He's saying, I'm just going to guess C. Too slow is gutted. He's saying, no, it's always going to be like that on the asset at the end, buddy. It's there to make it difficult. Okay, this is going to be interesting. Okay, guys, after the countdown, we're going to ask you if it's litres in a quarter cask, kilometres from Glasgow to Campbelltown, or the combined age statements. After 3, 2, 1, hold up your answers. Oh, this is fantastic. Slogan. Oh, my goodness. We have 2 C's, 2 people going for the combined age statements. We have nobody suggesting it's kilometres from Glasgow, because that would be something in the order of 180, which would be more distilleries existing in Scotland, so that was well spotted. But I can tell you that the answer is almost the same as the number of litres in a quarter cask. So we have David and Ranald with the C's. We have a bit of a victory, a celebrated victory in the corner from Andrew, getting one back, claiming one back. Fantastic stuff. Litres in a quarter cask is absolutely what I was after. Did anybody out there manage, how can I bring this up better? That's a wee bit, but no, let's go with this one. Did anybody out there manage a 10 out of 10? Let's see how we're doing. Did anybody in the corner manage a 10 out of 10? David Allen, congratulations. A vPub quiz at the end on your own distilleries. 10 out of 10. But for a man from Denmark to kick a 10 out of 10 at the park, well done. Well done. Fantastic.
Well done.
There's a better 8 out of 10 over there.
Now the confession. The guy I used to vet the quiz tonight is also a man from Denmark. But I will stand up and say that he scored a 10 out of 10 while he was vetting. I didn't reveal the answers, so he did it off the cuff. Well done, buddy. Well done.
Did he write the website that said that? Different distilleries, because that's questionable.
Well, I go by the official information, and it's on theme with the communication and things we're talking about that we live in the online world. If you don't get it right the first time, it's hard to recover, right? So I got that from the Kilkerran website. Too slow, Rob. Despite you complaining, you got a 10 out of 10. Ian Sunderland got a 10 out of 10. Fantastic. Look at the community celebrating Sugar Kitty on a 10 out of 10. Molasses Mike just missed it with a 9 this time. Happy with that, says Hellswood on a 9 out of 10. It's a tricky one. Lots of 10 out of 10s, my goodness, too slow celebrating again. Fantastic. Falsgraf class in Germany saying you did a very usual quiz for me, 8 out of 10. Still celebrated, big guy. It's a fantastic score. How are we doing? More 10 out of 10s coming up from Graham Fraser, from Alistair McPhail, our ambassador. Fantastic, Alistair. Terrific stuff. And Peter just saying, with that, I call it a day, Aquaviti and Springbank team. Thanks for organising, was great fun. And to all of you, see you next time. Slanchava. Jimmy Legacy and Roy, please thank these men from me. I'm sure they'll never stay up drinking whiskey this late on a school night. It's been fantastic, just like the whiskey from Springbank and Glengyle. And he's bought me a very generous dram too. Jimmy Leg, you're a superstar. I can't wait to hang out with you at the end of September. I've told these guys about your expedition, about how your desire to be here in Campbelltown has spurred an entire event on the west coast of Scotland at the end of September. I hope that these guys will come and shake your hand when you're here. Thank you for your dram, buddy. Cheers to you. Whiskey Mystery Phyllis saying, I'm enjoying Deepa's barley to bottle while she is away. Great show and cheers. Thanks very much, Phil. Thanks for being in. I got a wee message from Deepa this week as well. I know she's away seeing family in Asia. Rob Smith is saying, great vPub. Thanks to the Springbank crew for sticking around and finishing Kilkerran 8-year port matured. I hope you're enjoying it, Rob. I hope it's going down very well. Rick Jones is saying, go to bed, Roy. You've got work to do tomorrow. I have an exam to say this absolutely right. And I've got studying to do before I even go to bed. And I've got all this to pack away. This is the nightmare. I need to deal. Hellswood is saying, Fab vPub, Roy. Thanks to you and the amazing team there, Aquaviti. Truly looking forward to our visit there on the 2nd of October. Lots of the community coming down, fantastic. And Ben is saying, Aquaviti and Springbank crew, thanks for a great vPub. And Tom Elmer is saying, missed out most of the vPub, but I'll catch it on the replay. Had to work, Aquaviti. I've got to work too now, buddy. Fantastic to have you. And listen, I'll raise this glass to all of you and say thank you very, very much for your openness, for your welcomeness, for your candidness, for your dedication to do not what's easy, but what's right. Slanchivar, thank you. Now, I'm sure that they're going to sit there quietly while I say my goodbyes to you. I've brought them up on the screen. Yes, I appreciate that this has not been a typical vPub. I think that it was always going to be tricky for me to indulge and interact with you as much as I can when I had 3 really interesting folk to speak to with difficult questions to pose to them. And I focused on that tonight. I hope you'll forgive me. But patrons, I will catch up. I'm delinquent with my lock-ins. That is very much a focus for the rest of this month. The rest of next month, September. We're at the end of August. I will catch up with the lock-ins that I owe you. And of course, I'll be back here next week with another vPub. And I can't wait to hang out with you then. Like I said, everything that I've understood in the course of the last few days will influence everything that I speak about in future vPubs. Peter Lee's got some dram. Roy, please say many thanks to all the staff at Springbank. Denise and I will be back up on the 18th of September for another tour with Barfly, Dan Hawkins. Fantastic, Peter. Thank you so much. Listen, I'm going to raise this glass to all of you beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated barflies and remind you, like every week that I always do, how much you're loved and how much I appreciate you dropping in, whether I come to you from sitting back home in my wee drinking den or coming out on the road. It's fantastic to have your support. For me, this week has been more than that. It's fantastic to feel the support of an entire distillery team, an entire workforce, an entire philosophy and culture, and know that whiskey, in some places, is in very, very good hands for the future. I'm sure you'll feel that when you come here, and I encourage you to do that. I look forward to hanging out with you next week, and until then, I'll raise this glass and say slancha. Beautiful whiskey folk, dedicated barflies. And from everybody, it's Springbank. Slancha. Cheers, whiskey folk.